Chapter 325. Genius 1, second remember if you want to go. Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Wang Yu had just left the battlefield when he suddenly received another message. System notice, player Little One has issued a challenge to you through search mode. Do you accept? Seeing this name, Wang Yu was stunned for a moment. The one just now was called Little 5, and now this one was called Little One. As long as one wasn't stupid, they could tell at a glance that they were in cahoots. Are they forming a group to kill me? Wang Yu smiled bitterly and clicked accept. If he rejected, he would have to deduct points. No matter how small a fly was, it was still meat, wasn't it? This time, the setting was a forest. In order to widen the distance between them and Kite, Little One deliberately found such a map. This map was much larger than the previous map. As an archer, the larger the map, the safer they felt. Moreover, there was also the protection of the forest. As long as the opponent wasn't a thief, Little One was confident that he could toy with any class to death. After entering the map, Wang Yu did not move. After his trip to the elf city, Wang Yu had developed a phobia of forests. He did not dare to wander around the forest. Besides, archers were naturally fast runners, and grandmasters of combat could not keep up with them. Moreover, in a map like this, archers would have to switch to another place to kite after every shot. If Wang Yu did not know where his target was, he would be led by the nose by Little One. So instead of taking the initiative to attack, it was better to stay still. Little One had the same idea as Wang Yu. He also wanted to use silence to deal with the situation. This was because Little One wasn't a sharpshooter. He had chosen another branch, lurking archer. After changing his profession at level 20, he had become a survivor. Survivors were adept at tracking and fighting in the forest. They could also coat their arrows with poison. They could also use all sorts of explosive items and traps. In short, they were a wretched class that couldn't be any more wretched. As soon as he entered the map, he skillfully went into the forest and set up 2 traps in the forest. One was called Frost Trap, which was a trap that could freeze the target for 5 seconds. The other was called Fatal Trap, which was a crossbow trap. When a survivor activated the crossbow trap, crossbows would shoot at the target for 5 seconds. Although the attack power of the 2 traps was not very high, Wang Yu was only a Grandmaster of Combat, and a Grandmaster of Combat's current HP was only around 1200. Even if he could not kill Wang Yu in one shot, he would be able to reduce his HP to a critical level. At that time, he would shoot a few arrows from the side. Even if he did not die, he would at least lose a layer of skin. Little One's little abacus was ringing loudly, but after a long while, Little One, who was lying in ambush in the forest, did not see Wang Yu appear. It's such a big place. How could he get lost? Little One mumbled in confusion. Another 5 minutes passed, and Wang Yu still did not appear. Little One began to panic. Wang need a more first, you. No, I have to lure him here. Thinking of this, Little One crawled out of the bushes and walked out of the forest. The archer's vision was better than other professions. Before Little One walked out of the forest, he saw Wang Yu outside the forest. Wang Yu was sitting there, playing a game of train pulling with a deck of self-made poker cards. If I don't come and take a look, will I just sit here until the time is up? Meow. Little One cursed and immediately took out a small crossbow. He aimed at Wang Yu and shot. Wang Yu felt the killing intent the moment Little One aimed at him. He quickly raised his head and saw an arrow flying toward him. Wang Yu waved his hand and caught the arrow. Then, he looked in Little One's direction. Wang Yu felt the killing intent the moment Little One aimed at him. He hurriedly raised his head and saw an arrow flying toward him. Wang Yu casually waved his hand and caught the arrow in his hand. Then, he looked in the direction of Little One. F***CK. Seeing Wang Yu catch his crossbow arrow, Little One was slightly shocked. Then, he saw Wang Yu looking at him. Little One knew that Wang Yu couldn't see him, but he still shivered in his heart. So, he turned around and ran into the forest without saying a word. After determining Little One's location, Wang Yu put away the poker cards, got up, and chased after him into the forest. Little One in front looked back as he ran. When he saw that Wang Yu had been lured over by him, he was delighted and turned around to shoot another arrow. In the end, it was still caught by Wang Yu. The two of them quickly ran to the place where Little One had set the trap. After Little One plunged his head into the bushes, he stared intently at Wang Yu. Sensing his aura, Wang Yu naturally chased after him. You took the bait, didn't you? Little One chuckled and then counted down. One click. With the sound of a trap being triggered, a blue light rose from the soles of Wang Yu's feet, and then Wang Yu's legs were directly frozen. Ha ha! Are you stupid? When Little One saw that Wang Yu had fallen into the trap, he laughed and jumped out of the bushes. Then he activated the crossbow trap not far away. Pooh! 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 When the trap was activated, four crossbows immediately aimed at Wang Yu. Arrows shot at Wang Yu like locusts. At the same time, Little One also raised his crossbow and shot at Wang Yu. The shooting speed of a crossbow was based on the user's agility. 5 crossbows could shoot at least 10 arrows in a second. In 5 seconds, a total of 50 arrows were shot at Wang Yu. No matter how low the attack power of a survivor was, 50 arrows were enough to turn Wang Yu into a sieve. However, Wang Yu chuckled. His hands moved up and down, either slapping or blocking, calmly hitting all the arrows that were shot into the ground. This is F***king. Impossible. Looking at the arrows all over the ground, Little One was completely dumbfounded. The crossbow in his hands almost fell to the ground. Rebirth had been released for more than half a month. As players became more and more proficient, although it was rare to shoot down arrows, it was not unheard of. For example, agile thieves with high agility could use daggers to shoot down arrows. However, no matter how high a thief's agility was, they were still only around level 20. It was already shocking for a thief to be able to shoot down a few arrows at once. Who knew that this grandmaster of combat in front of him could actually shoot down 50 arrows with his bare hands? How much agility did he need to do that? Could it really be a system bug? In fact, what Little One didn't know was that the most important thing to shoot down an arrow wasn't agility, but eyesight and reflexes. With Wang Yu's reflexes, he could already catch an arrow back in the novice village. Moreover, crossbows couldn't shoot or scatter. No matter how many arrows there were, the 5 crossbows could only attack one target, Wang Yu. As long as Wang Yu could keep up with the crossbow's frequency, he could shoot down 5 arrows with one palm. The frequency of 2 rounds per second wasn't considered too fast. With Wang Yu's skills, he could naturally deal with it with ease. At the same time, the frost trap's effect had also been dispelled. Wang Yu leaped to the side of Little One, who was dumbfounded. Then, he reached out and grabbed Little One's neck. Say, how many brothers do you have? Wang Yu asked. 7, Little One answered blankly. Chapter 326. Genius 1 second remember if you want to go. To provide you with exciting novels to read. Then we have to form a team to compete. Little One answered honestly. Oh, I got it, Wang Yu replied. He exerted force in his hand and crushed Little One into a ball of white light. How is it? How is it? Seeing Little One come out, everyone in the team surrounded him. I lost, Little One said dejectedly. Not only did he lose, but he lost convincingly. After all, Little One had the absolute professional advantage and home advantage in this competition. In the end, Wang Yu stood in the trap and dealt with him. Little One had no choice but to admit defeat. Little 4 and Little 5 were slightly disappointed, but they comforted him. That's not bad, to be able to stay in there for so long. Little 4 and Little 5 were killed the moment they entered, but Little One actually stayed inside for a full 20 minutes. Just this alone was enough to make the others admire him greatly. Yeah, as expected of the boss. You guys must have fought very intensely, the others said one after another. Little One swallowed the words that were on the tip of his tongue when he heard his teammates' words. Sort of, Little One said against his will. Then, he changed the topic. That person is too powerful. Everyone, don't look for him anymore. Otherwise, if this continues, the points will really become negative. Little 4 cried. I've already lost points. He was the unluckiest. He met Wang Yu in the first round. All right, the points for the individual competition are too low. Why don't we play in a team? Little One suggested. Little 4 was matched with Wang Yu in the first round. It could be seen that Wang Yu's points weren't high. If he continued to stay in the individual competition, it was very likely that he would encounter Wang Yu again. Wang Yu didn't have a team, so he probably wouldn't form a team. Therefore, as long as one's mind was normal, they would instinctively avoid such a pervert. Furthermore, if they formed a team, the points would be much higher than in the individual competition. Moreover, everyone was on the same team. Working together would definitely be better than fighting alone. All right, the individual competition is boring. Little One's suggestion received everyone's approval. However, at this moment, Wang Yu left the arena hall and said to the master of esports, "I want to form a team competition. Are you sure you want to enter the team competition alone?" "Confirm." Wang Yu clicked confirm, and the scene changed to the team arena hall. There were many more people in a team competition than in a solo competition. Moreover, most of the players here had their own teams. There weren't many people like Wang Yu standing alone. Of course, it wasn't that there weren't any casual players in the hall. At this moment, many casual players were shouting, "Team competition, expert team 5, 9, 1 plus 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 grandmasters of combat. Please mind yourself." An expert leading the team, more than 50 points plus plus plus, not a grandmaster of combat. F asterisk CK? Seeing these notifications, Wang Yu felt depressed. Were grandmasters of combat so unpopular? It couldn't be helped. In PvE, grandmasters of combat could wear heavy armor and be a secondary tank. In PvP, with the physique and settings of grandmasters of combat, they were a bit useless. Especially in a group fight, the confidence of a grandmaster of combat with or without a weapon made a difference. Wang Yu strolled around the team arena hall for a long time. In the end, the casual players in the team were discriminated against by their professions. It was as if adding a grandmaster of combat to the team would cause them to lose the competition. This made Wang Yu want to cry. Who did the grandmasters of combat offend? Finally, in the corner, Wang Yu found a team. The team leader was a girl. This girl was different from other team leaders. She didn't have any class discrimination. The team slogan was also very simple. Fight plus 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 plus. Wang Yu was happy. He sent an application over. The girl didn't even look at it before she accepted and opened the match. A few seconds later, a system notification appeared. Base team has issued a challenge to your team. Your team leader, 7 Blueberries, has accepted. Then, the scene changed. Wang Yu and the others entered the arena map. After entering the map, everyone looked at each other and took out their weapons. Our opponent is a professional team. We have to be serious. A warrior named Azura Musashi waved the greatsword in his hand and said to the others, I know. I don't need your nonsense. You're not the team leader." The others obviously didn't buy Azura Musashi's words. After all, they were a casual team. It was normal for them to have poor discipline. 7 Blueberries was probably with Azura Musashi. Seeing that Azura Musashi couldn't control the situation, he quickly said, "Everyone, listen to him." Tisa, the girl's words don't count. The others said again. One was speechless. So they didn't want to listen to anyone's orders? The water in the casual team was really deep. After a while, everyone remembered that Wang Yu was at the back. They turned around and asked, "Speaking of which, where's your weapon?" It was a holographic simulation game, after all. Apart from those who were flashy and had top-tier equipment, the players usually wouldn't hold their weapons in their hands. However, the battle was about to begin. It would be a little unreasonable not to take out a weapon. Wang Yu shrugged and said, "I don't have a weapon." "No weapon? Are you a grandmaster of combat?" The others asked in surprise. "Yes." Wang Yu nodded. F asterisk CK. The chaotic scene became even more chaotic. F asterisk CK. What's the point of fighting? That's right. You're a grandmaster of combat. Why are you playing in the arena? The others pointed at Wang Yu and questioned him. Air. Wang Yu said gloomily, "The team leader didn't say that we don't want a grandmaster of combat. She's nothing." Other than Asuka Musashi, everyone looked at 7 Blueberries in disdain. "I'm Ironox." Wang Yu pointed at the ID above his head. "Who's Ironox? I don't know him." The others looked at Wang Yu in disdain and left the team. At the same time, he scolded, F asterisk CK, "I'm so unlucky to meet such a thing." Hurry up and leave. I don't have time to play with you. Then, the other 7 players left the arena. Other than Wang Yu, only Asuka Musashi and 7 blueberries were left on Wang Yu's side. Most of the players in the arena were battle team players. Casual players were not easy to play. Now that there was a Grandmaster of Combat, wouldn't it be 9 against 10? There was no need to think about the outcome of 9 casual players against 10 battle team players. If they were eliminated, they would lose 10 points. If they left, they would lose 1 point. No one would complain about having too many points. Why didn't the 2 of you leave? After the others left, Wang Yu asked Asuka Musashi and 7 blueberries curiously. I'm the team leader. If I leave, my points will still be reduced by 10. Moreover, aren't you still here? 7 blueberries blushed. What about you? Wang Yu looked at Asuka Musashi. I won't leave if she doesn't leave, Asuka Musashi said firmly. Chapter 327. Genius 1, second remember if you want to go. Talk net, providing you with exciting novels to read. What do you mean? Before 7 blueberries and Asuka Musashi could understand what Wang Yu meant, Wang Yu had already run forward. The layout of this competition map was very simple. It was a square field with 4 buildings in the middle. The entire map was divided into a district. I really don't know how to write it, but everyone can understand it. There were a total of 3 paths in the top, middle, and bottom. Wang Yu's team was at the bottom left of the map, while Gigi's team was at the top right corner. Coincidentally, Gigi's team was Little One's team. They were all matched up with 0 points and 0 battles, so the probability of them being matched up was still very high. Seeing the notification of the other players leaving the battlefield, Little One's gloominess from being killed by Wang Yu disappeared. He said cheerfully, "It seems like we're quite famous." The other side was scared away when they saw our names. Ha! They're a random team after all. Even if they fight, they have no chance of winning. The people from Gigi's team agreed. Wow, another one left. There are only 3 people left on the other side. This is a gift from the heavens. I'm telling you guys, don't fight with me later. I want to be the MVP. Little 5 shouted excitedly when he saw another player leaving. Little 4 smiled and said, I'm afraid that they won't be able to keep the last 3. The people from Gigi's team prepared for the battle while paying attention to the system notification. Seeing that no other players left, they were certain that the other side was going to fight to the end. Seeing that the number of people on the other side had stabilized, Little One simply dismantled the trap that he had set up earlier. He then said to the others, Let's go. We'll kill them directly. 10 against 3. There's no doubt about it. Go, go, go. The others received the order and followed behind Little One. They went straight to the route from the middle. When they walked to the middle of the map, a tall and mighty figure suddenly came into Little One's sight. It was Wang Yu who was rushing over. At this time, Wang Yu was looking around for an opponent. It seemed like he was not familiar with the map. Huh, this person looked a bit familiar. After Little One saw Wang Yu, he said in confusion. When Wang Yu got closer, Xiaowu suddenly shouted, Holy shit, it's Iron Ox. In the previous 3 battles, Little 4 was kneed to death by Wang Yu with his head buried. Little 1 was strangled to death by Wang Yu from behind, and only Little 5 was smashed to death by Wang Yu's punch, so Little 5 had the deepest impression of Wang Yu. Xiaowu and the other 2 had fought with Wang Yu before, so they knew very well how powerful Wang Yu was. When they saw Wang Yu rushing towards them, they subconsciously wanted to retreat. At this time, the other people beside him said, What are you afraid of? Just now, the boss alone fought him to a draw. Do you think the 10 of us will lose? That's right. When Little 4 and Little 5 heard what their teammates said, they quickly turned to look at Little 1 with admiration on their faces. Love, go small, say, neck Little One's sweat flowed down. Others might not know why they had fought for so long, but how could Little 1 not know? If this guy wanted to kill him, it would be a piece of cake. He was not much stronger than Little 4 and Little 5. Little 1 wiped his sweat and said, Let's not be careless. Iron Ox is famous, and he is still very powerful. I think we should retreat first. I'll set up 2 traps first. With so many teammates around, Little 1 still did not feel any sense of security. Okay, we'll listen to the boss. With that said, the 10 of them turned around and ran back. When they walked to the grass at the intersection, little one bent down and set up a frost trap. Then, he set up a fatal trap at the corner of the intersection. In this way, both traps had a hidden effect. Once Wang Yu stepped on them, apart from the trap's attack, with so many people working together, Wang Yu might not be able to resist them. TSK, from the three words, might not be, it could be seen that little one's heart was in turmoil. He had no confidence at all. After setting up the traps, little one pointed to the other corner of the intersection and said to little 7, who was beside him, "You stand there. When he steps on my trap later, cast a silence spell." Little one was still not confident even after setting up 2 traps, so he simply left the only cleric in the team here to act as a first mover. The Grandmaster of Combat was a profession that relied on skills. One you had blocked the arrow just now, so it was obviously a blocking skill. After the priest had silenced him, little one didn't believe that he could still block the arrow. Little 4, stand behind the trap. When the trap is triggered, use whirlwind/OK. Little 4 hurriedly walked to the position that little 1 pointed to. Little 5, hide well. We'll see what you could do later. Understood. Little 5 made an OK gesture and disappeared. Other than little 5 and the other 3, the other professions of the Cardinal Combat team were a shield warrior, a punishment paladin, an archer, and 3 mages. Because survivors' control skills were also very strong, the team did not have a warlock profession that focused on control. This was a standard damage output team. Once the opponent was controlled, they could directly kill them. After arranging everyone's positions, Wang Yu also walked to the center of the map with a smile on his face. There was a crossroad in the middle of the map. Wang Yu was not familiar with the map. He looked left and right, but he did not know where to go. Seeing this, little 1 hurriedly said to the archer, "Little 3, you go and lure him over." The archer said with a straight face, "How many times have I told you? Call me Old 3. Little 1 hurriedly changed his words and said, "Okay, Old 3, go quickly. If he takes a detour, our ambush will be for nothing. Remember, after you hit him, run back, don't stop." "Okay." After receiving the order, little 3 quickly ran over. At this time, Wang Yu, who was lingering at the crossroad, finally confirmed that he was going to turn left. Suddenly, an arrow flew toward him. After Wang Yu swatted the arrow, he heard someone shouting, "Idiot, come and catch me." It turned out that this little 3 was afraid that Wang Yu would not take the bait. Not only did he not listen to little 1 and run away, but he also shouted to provoke Wang Yu. This guy obviously underestimated Wang Yu's movement ability. Wang Yu looked in the direction of little 3 and used Bursting Fist and Nightfall Leap. In just a flash, he instantly stuck to little 3. F***CK. Little 3 was shocked and turned to run. Wang Yu took a step forward and casually stepped on little 3. Little 3 was instantly trampled into a white light. At the same time, 7 Blueberries and Asaka Musashi, who were hiding in the corner, trying to wait for the time limit to end, suddenly received a system notification. Your teammate, Iron Ox, killed the enemy player, little 3. Ha, this Grandmaster of Combat is not bad. He actually killed one. Asaka Musashi exclaimed. Yeah, if the others didn't retreat, we might have one. 7 Blueberries said regretfully. This girl no longer had any hope for this round. She only hoped for a draw. Chapter 328. Genius 1, second remember if you want to go. Talk.net, providing you with exciting novels to read. I don't know. That Grandmaster of Combat suddenly caught up to me. Little 3 died in a daze. He still couldn't figure out why Wang Yu, a Grandmaster of Combat, suddenly appeared in front of him. F***CK. The other members of base team were shocked. This is a freaking Grandmaster of Combat with full agility. Grandmaster of Combat's agility growth was far from that of an archer. Although little 3 was an extreme type that put all his points into agility, as an archer's main attribute, he naturally put a lot of points into agility. To be able to catch up to little 3, Wang Yu had to be at least full agility. As for teleportation, the technical team didn't even think about it. This kind of rare skill was unique to magicians. A Grandmaster of Combat using teleportation was obviously a challenge to their intelligence. Yes, something like that. Little one nodded. He remembered the scene of Wang Yu catching 50 arrows with his bare hands. Normal players' thinking was still stuck in the circle of attack equals agility. All agility and attack is still so high? Little Four asked in shock. He was almost killed by Wang Yu. It's related to his skills and equipment. Correspondingly, he doesn't have much HP, so we have to control him until he dies. Little Seven, you have to cast a silence at the first moment, understand? Little One repeated the order. Got it, Little Seven said quickly. After confirming the direction of the target, Wang Yu ran directly towards base team. Base team had just gotten into position when they saw Wang Yu's figure. Coming. Everyone set up an ambush. With Little One's order, base team's people quickly retracted their heads. Pa! In the next moment, the sound of a trap being struck rang out. Little One was pleasantly surprised. Got it. Little Seven cast a silence. Before Little One finished speaking, Little Seven popped his head out from around the corner. He extended his staff and threw a holy flame at Wang Yu. Holy flame was a directional skill. Once it locked on, it couldn't be dodged. After Little Seven threw the spell, a string of ellipses appeared above Wang Yu's head. Kill him. Seeing that Wang Yu was so easily controlled, Little One was pleasantly surprised and ordered everyone to attack. For a time, everyone in the basic battle team appeared and attacked Wang Yu. The first to arrive was Little Five, who was behind Wang Yu. He had been following Wang Yu ever since Wang Yu arrived. The moment Wang Yu was silenced, Little Five grabbed his dagger and used gouge on the back of Wang Yu's head. In Little Five's mind, this was a surefire control skill. However, it was as if Wang Yu had eyes on the back of her head. With a backhand grab, she grabbed Little Five's wrist and pulled Little Five to her side. In Rebirth, the displacement effect of a wrestling like this was determined by strength. A Grandmaster combat would not be able to move a heavy class like a warrior or a knight, but it would be a piece of cake for them to move a weak thief. Little Five was pulled in front of Wang Yu's chest, as if he was riding on a cloud. At this moment, the 4 crossbow machines and Little One's crossbow bolts arrived like a swarm of locusts. Wang Yu pulled Little Five to the side to block, and a dozen crossbow bolts turned Little Five into a porcupine. Fortunately, the crossbow bolt's attack power wasn't very high, and Little Five was still struggling at death's door after being hit a dozen times. Under normal circumstances, teammates in the same party wouldn't be hurt when they attacked each other. But once they were pulled by another player or forced to move, the system would automatically judge that the player had changed from an active player to a passive one. This kind of judgment was to prevent some shameless players from using their teammates as an invincible shield during PK. At the same time, Wang Yu saw 3 icicles flying over from the side. He immediately kicked Little Five's butt, and Little Five immediately pounced forward. A wizard's attack power was naturally much higher than a survivor's. The pitiful Little Five didn't have much HP to begin with, and when he was hit by 3 icicles, he instantly turned into a ball of white light under the blue fog. The scene was like fireworks, and it was very beautiful. When they saw this, Little One and the others were so scared that their faces turned pale. This was even after he was muted and immobilized. If this guy could move, wouldn't he have to fight 10 people? But fortunately, Little One was quite confident in his strategy because the 3 strength classes had already charged not far away from Wang Yu. Arrows and spells were single-target long-range attacks, and Wang Yu could use others to block the attacks. Now, that Little Five was dead. No one believed that Wang Yu could block the attacks from the 3 strength classes. As a knight, Little Six charge speed was faster than Little Two's and Little Four's charge speed, and he was the first to arrive in front of Wang Yu. The boxing glove in Wang Yu's hand suddenly turned into a long staff, and he stabbed it into Little Six's face. Little Six charge came to an abrupt halt. Wang Yu was also knocked back. At this moment, Little Fool and Little Four had also rushed below Wang Yu. Wang Yu, who was in midair, stabbed his staff into the ground, and his body rose up once again. Then he stepped on Little Fool's head, and his whole body borrowed the force to land in the middle of the 3. Die! When Little Six saw this, he raised his spear and stabbed. Little Four and Little Two also turned around, one activating Whirlwind Slash and the other activating Shield Bash. A weak Grandmaster of Combat had squeezed into the encirclement of tanks and still needed to attack. He could be squeezed to death. Unexpectedly, Wang Yu laughed and held Little Six spear with his left hand and used a borrowed force technique. He turned slightly and pointed the tip of the spear at Little Two. Then, with the support of his staff, Wang Yu jumped out of the encirclement of the three. Creak, sizzle. The noise produced by the collision of two strength-based professions was quite ear-piercing, to the extent that the first thing the two thought about was whether their weapons were broken, and not whether Wang Yu was dead or not. But the most frightening thing was yet to come. Little Two and Little Six attacks had blocked the movement path of Little Four's whirlwind slash, and when Wang Yu jumped out of the encirclement, he even added fuel to the fire by swinging his staff at the two's heads. The strength of these two blows could not be said to be very strong, but it was just enough to move the two's bodies by half a step. The pitiful Little Two and Little Two were directly entangled by Little Four's whirlwind slash. Wang Yu landed on the ground, turned around, and dodged the second wave of attacks from the ranged players. The three melee tanks also rolled into a ball, and Wang Yu saw the opportunity to stride over, and with the shadow of his staff, the three of them turned into light. It had only been a few seconds since Wang Yu jumped into the encirclement and turned around to kill the three of them. In the distance, the expressions of Little One and the others, who were holding their staffs and bows and were about to celebrate their victory, instantly changed from surprise to bewilderment. How is this possible? He can even dodge that? Wasn't he muted? Little Seven said in shock. He really couldn't understand how a Grandmaster of Combat, who couldn't even use a skill, could be so fierce. Little One was even more shocked than Little Seven. The Frost Trap's 5 seconds of freezing didn't even last 3 seconds on Wang Yu. Why did you remove the freezing effect in advance? When Wang Yu jumped in front of Little One asked with his eyes wide open, "You want to use the same move on me twice?" After killing Little One with one punch, Wang Yu muttered, "You want to use the same move on me twice? I didn't even step on it." Chapter 329. Genius 1, second remember if you want to go. The web provides you with exciting novels to read. Wang Yu had dodged the trap the moment it was activated. As the trap was placed in the bushes, no one saw it. Otherwise, Little One would have given up on fighting Wang Yu. Traps were instant cast skills. Dodging the moment the trap was activated would be impossible. Even a boss wouldn't be able to dodge it. Of course, bosses wouldn't bother dodging these simple traps. They would just stomp on them and destroy them. Even if Wang Yu was muted, it would be a piece of cake for him to deal with 10 people. At this moment, the 6 seconds of silence had passed. Wang Yu leaped up and crossed a distance of 5 meters with a collapsing fist. Thunder Stomp landed on the ground and instantly killed 3 mages. Then, with a slap of her left hand, Little Seven was grabbed by Wang Yu and crushed into a white light. In less than half a minute, the base team was wiped out. 7 Blueberries and Asuka Musashi felt like they were dreaming as they stared at the system notifications. They were dumbfounded even when the system notified them that they had won the match. Am I dreaming? 7 Blueberries asked Asuka Musashi in a daze. I don't know. Asuka Musashi's mind was in a mess. He could not figure out how they had suddenly won. It had to be known that pro teams were very strong and disciplined. For a random team like theirs to beat a pro team, it was purely a matter of luck. Even if they had more people, Asuka Musashi was not confident that they could win against the base team. Moreover, they only had 3 people left. No, it was 1 person. To be exact, it was only Wang Yu who was fighting. However, this person had wiped out an entire team. In reality, people had different talents. There were high and low combat abilities and stamina. It was rare to see a person fighting 10 people at the same time, but it was not impossible. However, this was in the game, and the attributes were fixed from birth. Everyone was on the same level, and the difference in levels was not that big. For 1 person to be able to defeat 10 people, this was simply unheard of. Moreover, the person who accomplished this feat was a Grandmaster of Combat. F***CK. Their worldview had been completely overturned. 10 seconds later, the system forcefully kicked the 3 of them out of the map. The scenery changed, and the three of them returned to their original location. Nyogo, did you just kill them all by yourself? Asaka Musashi asked in disbelief. He had even changed the way he addressed Wang Yu. In the game, it was a basic virtue to respect the strong. Wang Yu replied with a smile. Wang Yu got the MVP as he wished. 70 points entered his account. In addition to the 40 points from before, Wang Yu now had 110 economic points. He had completed 1/20th of his mission. Wang Yu was in a good mood. How did you do it? Asaka Musashi was most curious about this question. Wang Yu said casually, let's just walk over and kill them. What? Asaka Musashi was confused again. Walk over and kill them? What a simple and crude answer. Asaka Musashi did not believe it at all. However, since Wang Yu did not want to talk about it, he was too embarrassed to ask. Wang Yu asked 7 blueberries next to him, girls, are we still going? 7 blueberries was stunned. She asked flatteringly, Brother Nyo, aren't you afraid that we will drag you down? Wang Yu said indifferently, it's fine. You guys stay there and don't move. I alone am enough. All right, I'll call for more people. 7 blueberries said as she called for more people to join the team. Join the competition. Get on. No class limit. This time, the girl added the words no class limit. There were many grandmasters of combat that were despised in the arena. When they saw a team with no class limit, they quickly joined the team. However, when they saw so many grandmasters of combat in the team, they quietly left. This made Wang Yu very angry. Even grandmasters of combat looked down on the grandmasters of combat. There was no way he could survive in this profession. At this time, Wang Yu received a friend request from Little One. Nyo God, I'm begging you, let us go. Little One said gloomily. Base team was a small team that was not ranked in the top 100. Just now, the 10 of them could not stop Wang Yu. Their confidence was greatly reduced, and they were on the verge of a mental breakdown. If they were to meet Wang Yu again, they would probably be disbanded the moment they came out. It's the system's arrangement. I can't do anything about it. Wang Yu was also quite embarrassed. Out of the 110 points he had today, 100 of them were obtained from base team. He would get sick of bullying a group of people. How about this? You guys can match up after we enter the map. How about that? Little One suggested. Wang Yu looked at the team that only had 5 people beside him and said, don't worry. After you guys finish fighting, our team might not even be full, Little One. Getting wiped out by someone who didn't even have a fixed team, that kind of feeling was really complicated. For the rest of the day, Wang Yu immersed himself in the arena. He suddenly realized that PvP was much more interesting than PvE. After all, the minds of bosses were dead. No matter how intelligent they could not be compared to humans. As the day went by, more and more people came into contact with him. Many strange skills and tactics were also an eye-opener for Wang Yu. By the time she logged off at night, Wang Yu had already fought more than 30 matches. While accumulating enough points, the Blueberry Battle Team, with 7 blueberries, had a 100% win rate, jumping to the top of the leaderboard. This made many high-level battle teams take notice of this small team. The experts were all amazed. Where did the Blueberry Battle Team come from? Could it be a foreign team? What the pro players didn't see was that there was one player in Blueberry who had racked up over 2,000 points in over 30 matches, more than 1,000 points higher than the number 1 player on the competitive leaderboards. However, such a high number of points didn't last long. It was just a flash in the pan, and it disappeared from the leaderboards in an instant. After leaving the arena, Wang Yu happily went to the arena merchant. Hello, powerful martial artist. How may I help you? The arena merchant asked respectfully when he saw Wang Yu. Wang Yu was quite surprised by the change in the arena merchant's attitude. When Wang Yu first came to the arena, this guy said things like, you can look, but don't touch anything. What players did not know was that every time they won a match, aside from competition points, they would also obtain a hidden attribute called Arena Honor. The Arena Honor could increase the favorability of the arena's NPCs. The higher their victory rate, the higher the Arena Honor. I want to buy some items, Wang Yu said. As the merchant opened the shop, he flattered, only a warrior like you is worthy to use our items here. After entering the arena store, Wang Yu was just about to flip to the smelting stone page when a piece of equipment caught Wang Yu's attention. Chapter 330. Genius 1, second remember if you want to go, to provide you with exciting novels to read. It was a brownish-yellow light armor that looked like ancient Chinese armor. It didn't have the special light effect of the equipment, and it was very simple and reserved. It was especially low-key among the gorgeous Western equipment. Martial Artist Guardian, Martial Artist Exclusive Competition Points Requirement. Seeing this line of equipment introduction, Wang Yu was shocked. It's actually a martial artist exclusive equipment. Wang Yu had played the game for a while, so he naturally knew how precious exclusive equipment was. For martial artists, this thing could be said to be invaluable, even more valuable than legendary equipment. In his shock, Wang Yu didn't say anything and directly bought it. His competition points became 0. Wang Yu didn't feel bad at all because other than materials in the arena, other equipment and items were randomly refreshed in the arena. Smelting stones could be bought at any time, but there wouldn't be another shop like this if he missed out on this opportunity. Luckily, I earned some points. Otherwise, I could only watch this equipment be refreshed. Wang Yu wiped the sweat off his forehead and looked at the equipment's attributes. Martial Artist Guardian, light armor, gold, damaged, reparable, physical defense, 40-40 magic resistance, 40-40 wind blast, passive skill. Jump ability increased by 20%, movement speed increased by 20%, attack speed increased by 20%, cooldown reduced by 20%. Fire invasion, passive skill. Jump attack increased by 20%, attack power increased by 20%, skill damage increased by 20%. Serene, passive skill. HP and MP automatically regenerate by 2% every second. Profession requirement. Martial Artist Exclusive Level Requirement. 15 Item Introduction. One of the Martial Artist Exclusive Equipment Sets. Lost in the mainland. It has been covered in dust for a long time. Current repair rate, 10%. Note, can be smelted equipment. Silkworm armor. The main attributes of the equipment were very ordinary. It could be said to be very low among the equipment of the same grade. It couldn't even be compared to some of the best silver equipment. However, the 3 skills of this equipment were extremely powerful. As for Su Rulin's recovery attributes, his wind blast and fire invasion attributes were definitely the strongest attributes that Wang Yu had ever seen. As a class that relied on combo attacks to make a living, the cooldown and release speed of the skills were naturally the most important attributes, followed by the movement attribute. However, these were all common attributes, and other equipment also had additional attributes. This was the first time Wang Yu had seen an attribute that increased the ability to jump. This was because in Rebirth, attributes such as movement speed were based on agility, while jumping ability was based on profession. As such, the jumping attribute seemed to be innately determined. From the first level until now, it had not increased at all. Among the 7 major professions, the Grandmaster of Combat had the strongest jumping ability, while the Guardian Knight was the weakest. This was also the only thing the Grandmaster of Combat could do. Other than that, Grandmasters of Combat's biggest advantage was that they could unleash their skills in mid-air, while other professions could only use their normal attacks while jumping. The effect of jump attack was the same as back attack, with a 30% damage bonus. Moreover, the effect of the Grandmaster of Combat's jump attack would also be strengthened, so jump attack was the main damage output of all Grandmasters. The fire invasion attribute not only increased attack and skill damage, but it also increased jump attack. After careful calculation, when wearing this equipment, the damage of jump attack would be increased by as much as 60%. This was an insane attribute. As for the problem of the main attribute, Wang Yu didn't care much. After all, things like defense, in Wang Yu's view of the game, were not too important. Moreover, this equipment could be smelted and repaired. Most importantly, the appearance of this equipment was much better than the silkworm armor that Wang Yu was wearing, which looked like a tortoise shell. Just this point alone made Wang Yu extremely happy. He finally had a set of clothes that he could change into after putting away the Martial Scholar's Guardian. Wang Yu exited the arena shop and quickly returned to the guild encampment's forging room. Opening magic forging, Wang Yu took off the silkworm armor and threw it into the smelting column together with the martial scholar's guardian. Then, in the material column at the bottom, a small line of text appeared. Require material. Smelting stones, X10. Damn, am I seeing things? Wang Yu rubbed his eyes and looked at the small line of text again. That's right, 10 smelting stones were required. This time, Wang Yu was depressed. Smelting 2 dark gold equipment only required 2 smelting stones, but smelting 2 gold equipment actually required 10 smelting stones. What kind of logic was this 10 smelting stones? That was 10,000 points. Adding on the weapons, 2,000 points. Just thinking about it made Wang Yu's scalp go numb. With Wang Yu's speed of clearing more than 30 matches in an afternoon, earning 12,000 points would take at least 3 days. 3 days was enough for him to level up a few times. However, when Wang Yu thought about it, she realized that her level was not as important as her equipment. After all, the leveling speed in Rebirth was too slow. Moreover, the fixed attribute points gained from leveling up were negligible compared to her equipment. Rather than burying himself in leveling up, it was better to get these 2 pieces of equipment first. To do a good job, a worker must first sharpen his tools. At this point, Wang Yu gritted his teeth and thought to himself, it's only 12,000 points, I'll just go into seclusion for a few days and grind. In the next 2 days, as soon as Wang Yu logged into the game, he went into the arena and immersed himself in grinding. The Blueberry team had tasted the sweetness of success on the first day, so they decided to form a fixed team. With a fixed team, Wang Yu didn't have to go through the hassle of splitting up teams and waiting for others. With Wang Yu's astonishing efficiency and patience as a fighter, his points reached over 10,000 in 2 days. Such a large number of competition points were all exchanged by Wang Yu for smelting stones. If others knew about this, they would probably poke at Wang Yu's back and scold him for being a wastrel. At this stage of the game, the purchasing power of points, when converted to gold coins, was equivalent to 10 gold coins. Using 1,000 gold coins to buy materials, if this wasn't wastrel, what was? Blueberry, on the other hand, was a dark horse. From an unknown team, they became the legendary team with the highest win rate in the country. This left all the professional teams dumbfounded. Damn, this Blueberry team is really unstoppable. In the office of the Xiaoyao team, which was under the command of the 3rd Guild in China, domination of the world, the guild leader Xiaoyao looked at the recent battle reports of Blueberry and asked his subordinates in surprise, "Who is the captain of Blueberry? Did you find out?" Xiaoyao was sitting opposite an assassin called Hidden Dragon. Yes, the captain of Blueberry is called 7 Blueberries, and the vice captain is Asaka Musashi. 7 Blueberries? Asaka Musashi? Who the hell is that? Do you have any other information? For example, which guild or club are they from? Xiaoyao asked. He had never heard of these 2 names before. Asaka Musashi's guild is called Warriors Alliance. It's a very low-level guild. 7 Blueberries. Hidden Dragon hesitated. What's wrong with 7 Blueberries? Is he from the 9 States Empire? No, she's a girl. She doesn't have a guild yet, Hidden Dragon said. Chapter 331. Genius 1, Second Remember Love, Go Away? We provide you with exciting novels to read. No guild, Xiaoyao exclaimed in shock. How is that possible? Is your information wrong? Old Hidden? Today's high-level battle squads, from in-game equipment to out-of-game training, had to spend a lot of money. As a result, which one of them didn't have the support of a large corporation or guild? For an unaffiliated player who didn't even have a guild to be able to achieve a 100% win rate, this was clearly nonsense. Hidden Dragon said unhappily, Wrong my ass. You're doubting my professionalism. No. Yulong Xiaoyao hurriedly smiled and said, What else? What else? Hidden Dragon asked. Detailed information on the 7 Blueberries. That's all. Just an ordinary level 20 cleric. Hidden Dragon said. Asaka Musashi is also a level 20 samurai. That's it. That's it, damn. Xiaoyao was depressed. After searching for a long time, he couldn't find anything other than their class and ID. This was no different from not searching at all. Actually, one couldn't blame the hidden dragon for being useless, because these two people were just ordinary passersby. No matter how ordinary they were, how could they find anything? What about the other members of the team? Xiaoyao asked. I'm not too sure about that. The members of their team aren't very fixed, and the ones we know are all from small guilds. It feels like they're a random team. It took our people a long time to find them, Hidden Dragon said honestly. That's right. Random team. Xiaoyao was even more curious about the Blueberry team. The system matched players based on their battle records and points. A team that had fought more than 100 matches without a single loss wasn't as simple as luck. Moreover, the members of this team weren't fixed. Could it be that these two players were pro players? Old Lin, are our team two grinding points in the arena? Yulong Xiaoyao turned his head and asked Yulong Shanlin, who was beside him. Yes. Can we go and meet the Blueberry team? That isn't a good idea, Imperial Dragon Mountain said. No matter how ostentatious Blueberry team was, they were still a new team. On the other hand, Team Ruling Heaven's second team, Team Imperial Dragon, was also a veteran team on the national rankings. If the system matched two teams, it could still be said that it was God's will. If they took the initiative to look for them, wouldn't others say that they were suppressing newcomers? In their line of work, apart from results, the most important thing was reputation. Xiaoyao said, What's there to be afraid of? Aren't there a few newbies? Just let them form a new team. Huh, that's a good idea, Imperial Dragon Mountain Forest said happily. Then make the arrangements. I don't believe that a new team can be that strong. All right, Yulong Shanlin responded and went to make arrangements. Xiaoyao wasn't the only smart person. It wasn't just Team Ruling Heavens. The other high-level teams couldn't sit still either. Other than Howren Alliance's Fuzi team and Nine States Empire's Yanhuang team, even Blood Alliance's Blood Red team gave Blood Red War Flag a mission. Although Blood Red War Flag was the guild leader, they weren't strong enough. They couldn't even enter Team 2, so they were like nannies in front of Blood Red War Flag. If they wanted Blood Red War Flag to investigate, Blood Red War Flag naturally couldn't ignore them. Thus, they put down leveling and dungeon clearing and brought their people into the arena. On the third day, which was the official launch of the game, Rebirth was released without limit, causing a large number of players to come in. The number of people online was tens of times more than usual. According to the official statistics, the number of people online on the first day had reached 130 million. As soon as Wang Yu came online, he was stunned by the scene in the city. In the past, Yu Huiqing only had tens of thousands of people. It was very spacious, but now it was very crowded. It was densely packed with players running out of the city, and the number of players in the city kept increasing. Wang Yu could tell that these were all new players because most of them didn't look like humans, but three new races. The three new races were easy to distinguish. The orcs had long fangs, and their bodies were green. They wore animal hides and looked very rough and mighty. The elves had long, pointy ears, and they wore light and revealing clothes. They looked like the daughter of a humble family. The Holy Feather race looked similar to humans. The only difference was that the Holy Feather race had feathers on their heads, and their clothes were mainly white. The players of these three races all wore level 10 beginner equipment. They looked around the city curiously, and there was almost no sign of human players. After all, humans are the most mediocre race. The new players were already lagging behind in level, so naturally, they couldn't lag behind in terms of talent. As soon as he came online, Wang Yu received a message from Wuji saying that he was waiting for him at the tavern. When Wang Yu finally squeezed into the tavern, the experts of Qianjin were already seated. Wang Yu wiped his sweat and asked Wuji, how did these new players get to level 10 so quickly? It had to be known that Wang Yu had spent a lot of effort to go from level 1 to level 10. Wuji said, Didn't you see the official website? In order to narrow the gap between the old players and the new players, the official accounts will be used as beginners' village missions to directly reach level 10. No wonder, Wang Yu looked at the scene outside the tavern with lingering fear. He asked the crowd, Why are you looking for me? I'm still farming points. What level are you now? Wuji asked. 27, Wang Yu replied. After killing the god of luck last time, Wang Yu took the last hit and got half of the experience. His level rose to 27. Wu Ji said angrily, "Now that old Yu is already level 27, you know. For things like the arena, you could just play around. You're not done yet. Leveling up is the most important thing, do you know?" Yes, yes. The others nodded. If they had Wang Yu's ability, they would probably have reached level 30 long ago. I'm sorry. Wang Yu was slightly taken aback when he heard that. He lowered his head and thought to himself that the atmosphere today was a little off. In the past, these guys couldn't wait for him to not level up so that they could catch up. Why was it that today? Did you clear the Sunset Temple instance dungeon? Wu Ji continued to ask. Sunset Temple? Wang Yu scratched his head and said, "Not yet. Isn't that a level 25 story dungeon? 2 days ago, I saw that you were all busy with camp missions, so I didn't do it. Then I came to farm points. We were just planning to clear this dungeon. Nyoga, call a few people for us." Wu Ji suddenly said with a smile. Wang Yu was speechless. This grandson was waiting for him here. Wang Yu really thought that he was concerned about his level. It seemed that he had overestimated these bad friends of his. Chapter 332. Genius 1, second remember if you want to go. Shua Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Sunset Shrine is only a 10-player dungeon, right? Wang Yu asked. Xuanjin could still gather 10 players. Chun Xiang smiled and said, "What kind of status do we have in Xuanjin? How can we challenge a normal dungeon? Even if it was the first clear of a level 25 normal dungeon, it would only drop some silver equipment at most. Moreover, the EXP wasn't much either. The experts of Xuanjin all had their eyes on the top of their heads. Naturally, they weren't interested in those equipment. What about the Hell Instance dungeon?" Wang Yu asked again. Soaring Spring praised. "This old man admires little brother Iron Ox's boldness." "That's right, it's a Hell dungeon." Wang Yu was depressed. Damn, wouldn't it take 25 people to open a dungeon? Every time the difficulty of the instance dungeon increased by 1 level, the number of people needed would increase by 5. Last time, when they opened the Scarlet Church, which had 20 people, Wang Yu had to scrounge everything together. He had even dragged out his family members to get 20 people. Where the hell was he supposed to find 25 people? Yeah, that's why we thought of you. Who doesn't know that God Iron Ox has a wide circle of friends? The others chimed in. Damn you. Wang Yu scolded in disdain and suddenly said, "Aren't we a friendly guild with the Blood Alliance? Why don't you just ask Blood Red War Flag?" Blood Alliance was a huge organization. Not to mention 25 people, they could even gather 250 people. Wu Ji said, "We don't need to trouble you if we have a use for him." What? Is he not going to help? Wu Ji shook his head and said, "No, he's just like you. He dragged a few of his guild's experts to the arena. We're not familiar with the other members of Blood Alliance. Also, do you think it's that easy to find experts above level 25? Wang Yu, currently, the average level of players was only around level 23. Level 25 experts were still as rare as a phoenix's feather. Love, go small, say, Netka, then I'll give it a try." Wang Yu opened his friend's list and sent a message. Has anyone farmed a level 25 Hell dungeon? Not long after, Counterattack Tiger was the first to reply. Join the Dark Faction. You're a traitor to humanity. Protruding. Wang Yu replied with disdain. Wang Yu was quite disappointed that the Tiger of Counterattack could not come. After all, this guy still had an expert brother. If one came, 2 would come. Now that the 2 of them did not come, it would be more difficult to gather 25 people. The second person to reply to Wang Yu was Mu Zixian. My level is not high enough. Among the girls in Xuanjin, the highest rank was Mu Zixian, who was only at the 18th level. She couldn't even make up the numbers. The third to reply was 7 Blueberries. Big brother Iron Ox, aren't you going to the arena today? Wang Yu spoke in the tone of an elder. Grinding in the arena is not a proper activity. The time of an expert is spent on leveling up. Oh, 7 Blueberries replied, then said obediently, then I'll go level up today. Love, go small, say, Netku 7878. Wang Yu replied casually and closed the chat. This girl was really easy to fool. How is it? After a while, Wuji and the others asked Wang Yu anxiously. No one. Wang Yu spread out his hands and explained the situation to everyone. After listening to Wang Yu's narration, Wuji was burning with impatience. Only when it was time to use people would one regret not having enough. Damn it, it seemed like forming a small group wouldn't work. They couldn't even gather enough people for a dungeon. There's news. At this moment, Wang Yu suddenly muttered. What's wrong? Is there anyone? The others saw this and asked happily. Yes, 10 people a team. He said they are from Thorn City and are not far from here. They're coming over now, Wang Yu said. Team? Not bad. Wuji was slightly surprised to hear this. I didn't expect you to find a permanent team. No, it's an enemy team. They added me as a friend later, Wang Yu said. Enemy team. Everyone was even more surprised when they heard this. Uncle Nyo, your way of making friends is really eclectic. To place one's pride exclaimed. Other than Wang Yu, there was probably no one else who could beat an opponent to the point that they were willing to accept him as a friend. There are still 5 people. You guys have to do something, right? Wang Yu said. Easy, Wuji said with a smile. I'll ask Blood Red War Flag to find 5 people from their guild. Wang Yu said, didn't you say you even found people from an enemy team? Is there something wrong with me finding people from a friendly guild? Wuji asked. There's nothing wrong with it. Blood Red War Flag was very generous to Chuanjin's people. When they heard that Wuji wanted to borrow people, they immediately sent 5 experts over. Actually, clearing dungeons was beneficial to both sides. Getting experience and equipment were benefits on the surface, but the most important thing was the dungeon guide. Although Blood Red War Flag knew that with Wang Yu as a variable, they couldn't just copy the dungeon guide. At the very least, they would know the characteristics of the skills of the bosses and monsters. Chuanjin and the others weren't familiar with the 5 people sent by Blood Red Alliance, but they had seen them before. The leader was a shield warrior, Bloodwall. Wang Yu and Wuji had cleared the Hurricane Cave with him. The warrior, Crimson Blade, the mage, Crimson Explosion, the archer, Crimson Hunter King, and the priest, Crimson Green Sack, had fought alongside each other when they were defending the guild encampment. These 5 people knew how strong Chuanjin's experts were. They were very excited to be able to fight with Chuanjin and the others again. Especially Blood Red. He walked in front of Mingdu and said excitedly, Boss Mingdu, can you give me an autograph after we clear the dungeon? Mingdu was stunned for a moment. Then he said excitedly without hiding his excitement, Haha, what autograph? We are brothers in the future. Really? Blood Red was very surprised. One had to know that Chuanjin's people had a bad reputation. Mingdu was the fiercest one. He didn't expect this legendary person to be so friendly. Of course, Mingdu took out a staff and stuffed it into Blood Red's hand. Take it, don't be shy this. Blood Red was flattered and hurriedly pushed it back. The Chuanjin people quickly persuaded, take it, or else he will annoy you to death. Even though Mingdu was usually eccentric, he was actually a person who valued friendship very much. Chuanjin and the others had discussed Mingdu's twisted personality. Trickster Chun Xiang said that Mingdu was a classic case of lacking love and recognition. Therefore, he had an inexplicable fondness for people who recognized him and an inexplicable disregard for strangers. Seeing Mingdu like this, everyone could not help but sigh. Trickster Chun Xiang really lives up to his name. To place one's pride was very confused about people liking people like Mingdu. He asked Wuji gloomily, did I choose the wrong class? It's not a problem with the class. It's a problem with the person, Wuji said earnestly. If there were half as many grandmasters of combat as mages, I would have fans too. To place one's pride was not convinced. Wuji said coldly, Iron Ox is also a grandmaster of combat. Chapter 333. Under everyone's persuasion, Blood Explosion didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he put away the staff that Mingdu had given him that wasn't much stronger than a fire stick. Seeing Mingdu's joyous expression, that weird feeling made everyone from Blood Alliance think back to the legends of Chuanjin. In an instant, the entire place froze. At that moment, a group of players pushed open the door and walked into the bar. They looked around and then walked towards Wang Yu. It was the 10 people from base battle team. The one leading them was the leader, Little One. Bull God. Little One waved his hand and greeted Wang Yu. Wang Yu laughed awkwardly and asked, "Who are you?" Wang Yu could only tell their classes but not their names. Little One replied. "All right." Wang Yu nodded his head and introduced to Wuji and the others. "This is Little One, the leader of base battle team." "Oh." Wuji nodded his head and asked Little One, "Third-rate battle team." "Yeah." Little One and his brother's expressions immediately turned ugly. The 5 from Blood Alliance heard Wuji's words, and cold sweat flowed down their foreheads. Damn, this bastard is still so direct. The people from Qianjin really aren't normal. There is a saying that one shouldn't speak short words in front of cripple. Even if base battle team wasn't that strong, he couldn't say it in front of them. Wasn't that just stabbing at their sore spot? "This is Bull God. Why don't you introduce him?" Little One asked Wang Yu with an unfriendly expression. "Wuji, our guild's boss," Wang Yu said. Hearing Wang Yu say that, Little One's expression changed. He pointed at Wuji and exclaimed, "Qianjin's Wuji. Oh, you're quite famous." Wang Yu smiled as he asked Wuji. Wuji said shamelessly, "Of course, when I was famous, you didn't even know how to play games." Wang Yu was silent. Indeed, this guy had only been playing games for less than a month. There was nothing wrong with Wuji saying that he didn't know how to play games. Seeing Wuji ridicule Wang Yu in such a manner, the unhappiness in the hearts of the people immediately vanished. Even an expert like Wang Yu was mocked to the point where he had no temper left. How could he not tolerate it? "Nyogo, isn't Sunset Shrine a 10-man dungeon? Are we going to split into 2 groups?" Little One asked Wang Yu when he saw so many people around the table. Before Wang Yu could say anything, Mingdu spoke first. "Why do we have to split into 2 groups? Isn't there a minimum of 25 people for Hell mode?" "Hell, is this Nyogo? You're not joking, right?" Hearing Mingdu's words, the people from base team were stunned. They then looked at Wang Yu with questioning eyes. Although players' equipment and skills were getting better and better, Hell dungeons were still an unreachable existence in the eyes of ordinary players. When they first arrived, they were wondering if they should raid elite dungeons or abyss dungeons. Who would have thought that this person would be so wild? He actually wanted to raid Hell dungeons. Wang Yu said calmly, "I'm not joking. We're going to go to Hell mode. Otherwise, why would we go through so much trouble to gather 25 people?" This, Little One and the others became hesitant when they heard this. They naturally knew that Hell mode was different from other dungeons. Other dungeons were projections of dark creatures. Even if the team was wiped out in the dungeon, they would not suffer any losses. Hell mode, on the other hand, was the true form of dark creatures. If they failed the dungeon, the losses would be greater than a normal death. It was not easy to level up. Wang Yu waved his hand and said, "Don't worry, our team is very strong." But Little One was about to say something, but Mingdu's mouth twitched. He smiled at the place one's pride and said, "You're such a coward and you want to play in a team? Damn." Little One's suppressed anger rose again. He stared coldly at Mingdu and asked Wang Yu, "And who is this?" It was one thing to be looked down upon by Wuji, but a person who looked like an idiot also dared to mock him. Little One could already be considered to have cultivated himself well by not attacking. Clay Bodhisattva still had some temper. "This is Mingdu." Little One's expression tensed. He was secretly glad that he did not attack. So this ugly idiot was actually the Qianjin killing god. "Mingdu, are these people from Qianjin?" Little One asked again. "Yes." Wang Yu nodded his head and introduced the others. The names of the experts from Qianjin were famous. They were not much weaker than the star players of pro teams. Of course, they were famous because of their fame. As for those in Qianjin, no one knew. Base One's team looked at these famous experts with their mouths agape. Finally, when he introduced the 5 brothers from Blood Alliance, Little One and the others let out a sigh of relief. At least there were a few that were not famous. However, when Wang Yu said that these 5 were experts from Blood Alliance, Base One's team once again exclaimed in surprise. The Ox God is truly amazing. He even invited experts from Blood Alliance. No wonder he dared to fight in Hell. Little 4 and Little 5 flattered Wang Yu. In the eyes of these team players, Blood Alliance was a first-rate team. They were much stronger than the people from Chuanjin. What they didn't know was that the two of them did not flatter him well and slapped him in the foot. This made the people from Chuanjin quite unhappy. The 5 from Blood Alliance wiped their sweat. No, we are indebted to Boss Wuji for bringing us to make up the numbers. Base 1 and the other side, TSK, people from big guilds are really different. They thought that Blood Alliance was just being humble. Wuji couldn't take it anymore and coughed. Okay, stop talking nonsense. Enter the team. As he said that, Wuji threw a team invite to everyone. Do you need any supplies? Wuji saw that everyone had entered the team and then asked. Everyone replied, no need. Then let's go. As he said that, Wuji led the way out of the tavern. The group of them left the city. On the first day of the game's official launch, the number of players was unexpected. After exiting the city, there were all sorts of players everywhere. It was even more majestic than when the game had just started. Wang Yu and the others were all well-dressed, and one could tell that they were high-level players. On the way, they were harassed by many new players. Some wanted equipment, some wanted to level up, and some even wanted to have babies. It gave him a huge headache. Mingdu, who had a weird temper, only didn't start a fire after everyone tried to stop him. In the backstory of the Reborn Light faction, the Twilight Church was the religion of Yu Huicheng. Everyone in Yu Huicheng believed in the Twilight God, Calpheus. Yu Huicheng's history books recorded, before the chaos, our God brought his servants and left us. When darkness descended upon the continent, our God still didn't appear. We knew that our God had abandoned us. Chapter 334. This temple was called the Twilight Temple, which was also known as the Sunset Temple. The Sunset Temple had already been occupied by dark creatures, and the priests and disciples had become the puppets of the darkness. According to the system, Wang Yu and the others arrived at the Sunset Mountains. Since this was a level 30 leveling area, there were no more new players, and it was much more spacious. The Sunset Temple was located at the foot of the Sunset Mountains. It was built against the mountain and faced the setting sun in the west. Under the afterglow of the setting sun, it looked even more solemn. Does your Thorn City also have a Sunset Temple? Wang Yu asked Little One curiously. According to the system's background introduction, the Sunset Shrine seemed to be the main city culture of Afterglow City. However, Little One and the other people from other main cities also had this quest. This made Wang Yu feel very confused. After all, the Sunset Shrine was located in the Sunset Mountains. No, Thorn City's main city dungeon is called Stranglethorn Valley. It's a level 70 dungeon, Little One said to Wang Yu. Oh, Wang Yu was confused. Then why do you have the Sunset Temple quest? Little One was stunned by Wang Yu's strange question. Dao Xue, who was next to Wang Yu, asked, You don't know what the main city dungeon is? I don't know. Wang Yu shook his head. Dao Xue said helplessly, According to previous MMOs, our 7 servers are actually the same server. In other words, the 7 servers we are in have 20 main cities. Each city has its own main city dungeon. Apart from the level 15 dungeon, level 25 storyline dungeons have to go to other main cities. Do you understand? Oh, then our Yu Huicheng is the location of the level 25 dungeon. Wang Yu nodded. Yes, not bad. It's rare for you to understand so quickly. Dao Xue was pleased. Fortunately, this guy was a noob and not an idiot. I see. Wang Yu's confusion was instantly resolved. Little One, who was dumbfounded beside him, muttered, Brother Ox, are you a newbie in the game? There was no other explanation for someone who didn't even know such basic knowledge. Yeah, this is the first game I've ever played, Wang Yu said. Little One was stunned for a while when he heard this. Then he gave a thumbs up and said, You really are a talent. There were still many level 25 players in the 20 main cities of District 7. Hence, many teams from various main cities had gathered in front of the Sunset Shrine's entrance. The area outside the dungeon was extremely lively. Everyone arrived at the entrance of the Sunset Temple. Wuji was just about to open the dungeon when he suddenly remembered something. He turned around and said to Wang Yu, "This dungeon is much harder than the Scarlet Church. Don't pull aggro." Wang Yu said disdainfully, "Do I look like someone with such a cheap hand?" Everyone in Xuanjin said in unison, "You are." Wang Yu wiped his sweat. "You guys are really rude." TSK. Wuji looked at Wang Yu with disdain and opened the Hell Dungeon's entrance. A line of words appeared on the boulder beside the Sunset Temple. Currently clearing the Sunset Temple. Current progress. 0. D*MN. That team just opened the Hell Dungeon. The team next to them exclaimed when they saw the line of words. Currently, the only Hell Dungeon that had been cleared was the Scarlet Church. Although it was only a level 15 dungeon, there were less than 10 teams that could clear it. Moreover, all of them were well-equipped teams from big guilds. They didn't expect that there would be people who dared to clear a level 25 dungeon. It was unimaginable. Let's do it then. Outsiders just like to make a fuss. Yu Huiqing's players weren't surprised at all. This is a level 25 dungeon. As a main city dungeon, the difficulty of the Sunset Temple was much higher than the Scarlet Church. Yu Huiqing's team said in disdain, "Tisk, if the dungeon didn't have a level limit, a level 35 dungeon would probably be cleared by our Yu Huiqing's people." When the Outer City team heard the bragging of Yu Huiqing's players, they couldn't help but exclaim, "Yu Huiqing's people really know how to brag." After the special display of the dungeon's opening, Wang Yu's team arrived at the Sunset Temple. The temple was very spacious, and the inside was completely different from the outside. The inside of the temple was the color of the setting sun. It was like a smear of blood that covered the entire temple. System notification. You have discovered the Scarlet Temple. Obtain 5,000 EXP. System notification. You have accepted the quest Twilight Scarlet. Quest rank A. Cleared the Hell Sunset Temple Dungeon 01. Current Hell Sunset Temple Dungeon progress. 0. Completion. 0. Status. Currently clearing the dungeon. The Sunset Temple was many times larger than the Scarlet Church. Everyone's map showed that they were at the bottom of the temple. They were just a bunch of red dots. This map is so big. This was the first time Wang Yu had seen such a large dungeon, and he was quite surprised. Wuji sneered, "This is nothing. Do you think they're all beginner dungeons like the Scarlet Church?" As a level 25 storyline dungeon, the Sunset Temple was indeed not that big. There were some group dungeons in Rebirth that had maps that were larger than a main city. After receiving the dungeon quest, Wuji ordered, "Everyone, follow the team and just move forward." Yinlao, Air, and the Scarlet Wall walked at the front while the others followed closely behind. They walked along the path of the temple for about 2 to 3 minutes before arriving at a large pool. The fountain in the pool was constantly spraying water. Under the illumination of the blood-red light, it looked like blood. In the center of the pool was a large beetle statue. On the side of the pool was a circle of smaller beetle statues. Just as Wang Yu's team reached the side of the pool, the small beetle statues suddenly shattered, and blood-red beetles flew to the ground. The armor on these red beetles shone brightly, and there were 2 huge jaws on their heads. Their eyes flashed with an evil red light, and they looked very mighty. After these guys landed, they scattered and crawled in all directions, blocking the path of Wang Yu and the others. Fallen Scarab HP 200000P 5,000 skills. Low flight, RAM, enchanted armor. The monsters in the Hell Dungeon were 20 levels higher than those in the normal dungeon. In terms of HP, they were not inferior to the small bosses. F***CK. Little One couldn't help but cry out when he saw the Scarab's attributes. Since he dared to form a team, Little One would be considered an expert among millions of players. However, he had never seen such powerful monsters before. "Boss Wuji, can we beat them?" Little One asked in fear. The Sacred Beetle's attributes were tank type. Moreover, it was able to fly at a low altitude and charge at high speeds. This kind of fast-running, high attack, and high resistance were currently the most disgusting monsters for players. There was no one better than them. Facing these monsters head-on would definitely not end well. Chapter 335. Wuji looked at the surrounding monsters and calmly said, "We can beat them." "Ah, this is a chain grenade. We have to do it in one go," Little One reminded. These beetles were standing in the same position as the snake monsters in the hurricane cave. Their aggro was close to each other. If they attacked one, they would all attack at once. This way, the players could only choose to do in one go. There were a total of 30 beetles before them. Just the thought of 25 level 25 players going up against 30 level 45 elite monsters sent chills down their spines. Wuji laughed and said, "One go. I like it." The Great Red Wall also came over and asked, "Boss Wuji, do you want to stand in the same position as last time?" The Great Red Wall was there when they cleared the hurricane cave. They knew that Wuji was good at standing in the same position. Wuji waved his hand and said, "No, you guys can deal as much damage as you want." Crimson Long March was stunned. "Boss Wuji, you must be joking. We're killing monsters that are 20 levels higher than us. If we don't have a formation or a commander, we'll be wiped out if we fight randomly." In Xuanzhen's guild channel, everyone asked, "Are we really not going to stand in the same position?" Wuji said, "The scarabs have a ramming skill. If we stand in a fixed position, we'll be scattered." "Not necessarily." Yin Lao Air explained, "The shield warrior's level 25 solid as a rock is a super armor skill. If the healers can keep up, we should be able to hold on." Wuji snorted and said, Of course I know that. But how can I be so easily guessed by you idiots?" "You piece of sh*t." Everyone cursed. The Great Red Wall was still struggling. "Boss Wuji, although I know that Xuanzhen is strong, we can't just fight in one go." "I know," Wuji said calmly. "Just find someone to pull the aggro. That's 30 monsters, and we only have 3 shield bearers. There's no way we can tank them all," the Crimson Great Wall exclaimed. A monster's aggro was directly linked to the player's damage. It was common knowledge that a shield warrior's attack power was pitifully low. They only had a single skill, Provoke, that could trigger aggro. However, Provoke's range was not very large. At most, it could aggro 5 monsters at a time. In a situation where the aggro was unstable, if the other players attacked freely, it would only take a few rounds for them to be wiped out. "I'm not counting on you guys." Wuji glanced at the bloody Great Wall and shouted at Wang Yu, "Old cow, go pull the aggro." "Fuck, you're letting Boss Iron Ox pull aggro?" Little One suddenly shouted when he heard Wuji's words. It was not that Little One did not trust Wang Yu's strength, but in his impression, the reason why Wang Yu was so strong was because of his high attack power. However, the beetles had 200,000 HP. No matter how high Wang Yu's attack power was, it was impossible for him to deal 200,000 damage with one punch. With the small physique of a grandmaster of combat, if he was surrounded by 30 beetles, he would die in less than a minute. Wuji said, "Why don't I let you go?" Little One said angrily, "I'm an archer." "That's it then. Just stand still and attack as hard as you can. Don't talk so much nonsense." After Wuji finished speaking, he gestured to Wang Yu to pull aggro. Wang Yu received the instruction and pulled out his long staff. He pushed against the ground and flew high into the air. Then, he followed up with a collapsing fist and flew towards the group of monsters. When he flew above the beetles, Wang Yu suddenly landed with a thunderstomp. The streaks of blue lightning flashed, and the closest group of beetles to Wang Yu all had 5,612 appear on their heads. After Wang Yu's attack, the 30 beetles quickly surrounded Wang Yu. Wang Yu did not panic. He used the 7-star steps and used the 7-star steps movement technique. He moved around the group of monsters as if he was taking a stroll in the park. The beetles' speed was not slow, but as tank monsters, their attack frequency was pitifully low. No matter how they flew, they could not even touch the corner of Wang Yu's clothes. While Wang Yu dodged the sacred beetle's attacks, his hands were not idle. The long staff in his hand was either pointing or sweeping, causing a sky full of staff shadows to bring about a wave of damage, pulling the beetles aggro. Wang Yu's bravery and invincibility stunned the Blood Alliance and base battle team. "Ow, how is this possible?" Little One cried out in fear. "He's cheating, right?" In Little One's eyes, Wang Yu fighting 10 alone was already a heaven-defying existence. But compared to now, Fighting 10 alone was not his limit. Young man, you probably haven't fought with Uncle Neo many times, right? To place one's pride, said in an old-fashioned tone. Fought twice. That's right. If you really fight with him 100 times, you will know that this doesn't count for much. To place one's pride, said with a face of admiration. The Chuanjin players nodded their heads. Not bad. Little Chick's summary is very accurate. To place one's pride's words, the Chuanjin players deeply understood. The more time they spent with Wang Yu, the more they understood how overpowered he was. Stop talking nonsense. Hurry up and attack with all your strength. Wu Ji angrily roared and once again gave an order. This was a hell dungeon. How could he fight alone with a group of people watching? Oh. The people who received the order immediately reacted. Some pulled out their knives, some pulled out their bows, and some threw their skills at the monsters like they were free. Wang Yu's attack was so high that no one in the entire game could compare to it. The beetles were surrounded by so many people, but their aggro was still on Wang Yu. One person pulling the monsters, 20 or so dealing damage. It was simple and crude. After 5 minutes, the 30 beetles were all killed, leaving behind 3 pieces of equipment. Fallen Saint Armor Physical Defense, 130150 Magic Resist, 20406 Vitality Enchanted Armor, Physical Armor plus 10. Required Level, 45 Required Class, Warrior, Knight Fallen Saint Helmet, Physical Defense, 7080 Magic Resist, 10206 Vitality Enchanted Armor, Physical Armor plus 5. Required Level, 45 Required Class, Warrior, Knight Fallen Saint Hand, Physical Defense, 4060 Magic Resist, 10206 Vitality Enchanted Armor, Physical Armor plus 5. Required Level, 45 Required Class, Warrior, Knight. Although they were a few pieces of trash equipment with extremely high level requirements, they were, after all, drops from small monsters. It was good enough that they dropped equipment. It was better than nothing. Snowpath collected the equipment and prepared to distribute it to everyone after calculating the price. At this moment, the temple shook. The eyes of the giant beetle statue in the center of the pool suddenly opened, flashing with a demonic red light. At the same time, the entire statue broke into pieces and peeled off. Wu Ji turned around and ran, then gave an order. Everyone retreat. Everyone hurriedly ran in all directions. At this time, the statue had completely revived. Boom! The gigantic beetle leaped and landed where everyone had been standing just now. Chapter 336. Genius 1 Second Remember Net, providing you with exciting novels to read. Twilight Armor, Patrick HP, 150000P, 10,000 skills. Heroic Ram, Burrow Attack, Earth-Shattering Blow, Twilight Armor. Monster Introduction. It is said to be the pet of the god of Twilight, Calpheus. It is worshipped as a divine beast by the Twilight sect. System Notification. Your team has activated the dungeon quest, The Unsetting Sunset. Kill the Twilight Armor, Patrick 01. Quest Reward, 15% completion. Background Introduction. According to the legends of the Twilight sect, Patrick was originally a divine beast that controlled the sunrise and sunset. After the god of Twilight disappeared, he left him here. Patrick was eroded by the power of darkness and became a slave of darkness. TSK Divine Beast. Everyone was amazed when they saw the background introduction of the Twilight Armor. With the word divine in front of the word beast, it was no longer a beast. Although it was only at the gold level, it had a godhood, so it would not be easy to deal with. Wang Yu asked curiously, how does a bug like this control the sunrise and sunset? Wu Ji pointed to the Twilight Armor and said, don't you think this guy looks familiar? A little. Wang Yu rubbed his chin and replied, it looked like a dung beetle. The Twilight Armor was the size of a truck, and its head was flat. It looked very similar to the dung beetles that were commonly seen in Wang Yu's hometown. Wu Ji laughed and said, that's right, because it pushes dung balls. In the scriptures of some sects, the sun is pushed by this guy. Everyone was amused when they heard Wu Ji's words. This mighty and domineering boss was actually a large dung beetle. No one knew if it felt the mockery or if it was the aggro attribute given by the system. But the Twilight Armor's blood-red eyes flashed, and it charged straight at everyone. Although they were both beast-type bosses, insects were not as intelligent as dogs. The Cerberus still knew to shout a few words in advance as an opening scolding, but this dung beetle only snorted lightly before attacking. As expected, it was a pragmatic type. Although the Twilight Divine Armor looked cumbersome, it was still an insect. Its speed far exceeded everyone's imagination. At this time, everyone was less than 5 meters away from the Twilight Divine Armor. The Twilight Divine Armor arrived in a flash. Fuck! Dodge! Seeing the Twilight Sacred Armor pounce on them, everyone shouted and scattered in all directions. Classes with high movement speed and agility were able to dodge the Twilight Armor's attack or escape its range. However, the team consisted of 8 mages and clerics. Not all of them had instantaneous movement like Mingdu. How could they possibly dodge the Twilight Armor's attack? Everyone, don't move. Brother Chun, run to the right. Seeing that these short legs were about to be crushed to death by the dung beetles, Wang Yu suddenly let out a roar. Bracing himself with his staff, he turned around and flew back from the right. He took the opportunity to use Thunder Stomp on the face of Wuji, who was closest to the Twilight Sacred Armor, and kicked Wuji out of his attack range. Then, Wang Yu used the momentum to turn around in midair. At the same time, he swept the staff in his hand and swept the 5 players from Bloody Explosion out of the attack range. Just as the 5 of them landed on the ground, the Twilight Sacred Armor brushed past them and went straight for Chun Xiang. Wang Yu's figure flashed and appeared not far away from Chun Xiang. Almost at the same time the Twilight Sacred Armor hit Chun Xiang, he used his cloud-capturing hand and pulled Chun Xiang out. Only then did Chun Xiang not die under the dung beetle's crotch and become a laughing stock. Hiss! The members of the Quanjin sect were used to seeing Wang Yu's skills, so they were more or less used to seeing such a scene. However, the others had never seen such a shocking scene before. When Little One, the Great Red Wall, and the others turned around to see this scene, they were stunned on the spot. They couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. This was especially true for those who had closed their eyes to wait for death. They looked at the Twilight Armor with lingering fear, then turned to look at Wang Yu with admiration and gratitude. The collision just now was not too dangerous for a profession that could move. Only classes with slow movement like mages and priests would not be able to do as they wished. However, saving 7 people in that kind of situation was not something an ordinary person could imagine. If Wang Yu had been even a second slower, not only would he not have been able to save a single person, but he would have also lost his own life. Putting his skills aside, his courage alone was enough to amaze everyone. Wuji touched his face and said, "If only your kick had been a little lower. It seems that your skills are quite good." Wang Yu glanced at Wuji and said proudly, "I did it on purpose." Wuji, while the two were bickering, the Twilight Armor had already slowly turned around. "Spread out," Wuji ordered as he took a step back. After all, there was a difference of more than 20 levels. Even the most tanky tank would not be able to stop this kind of brute force boss. Moreover, formations were a joke in the eyes of the Twilight Armor. It could be easily broken up. Only when the formation was spread out could it disperse the force of the impact. Everyone present was an expert. This was the most basic knowledge, so there was no need for others to give them instructions. Therefore, before Wuji gave the order, everyone had already spread out. The Twilight Armor turned around and paused for a moment. Then it lowered its head and disappeared from the ground like magic. The system was amazing. Such a big dung beetle could burrow into the ground without making a sound. Who was the aggro on just now? Seeing the Twilight Armor disappear, Wuji hurriedly asked. "I don't know." Everyone shook their heads. It should be the initial aggro. When the whole team was within the boss aggro range, the boss aggro would be on everyone at the same time. This kind of aggro was called initial aggro. The aggro gained after players dealt damage to the boss, or after tanks taunted, it was called exclusive aggro. The Twilight Armor had taken the initiative to ram into the crowd, so the aggro was obviously not on one person. Moreover, in the previous round, no one had dealt any damage to the Twilight armor, so the aggro had not changed. It was still in its initial state. Wuji gloomily said, "Then this is going to be difficult. Since the Twilight armor's aggro was still in its initial state, it could attack anyone. In this case, someone had to be the bait to regain the aggro." Boom! At this moment, there was a loud noise. The Twilight armor broke through the ground under the priest Seven's feet. Seven could not dodge in time and was swallowed by the Twilight armor. F***CK. After receiving the news of Little Seven's death, the Cardinal battle team was shocked. They all turned around and attacked the Twilight Divine armor. Who would have thought that the Twilight Divine armor would spread its wings and dodge the arrows and magic? It buzzed as it flew into the air and then suddenly fell down. Boom! There was another loud noise, and a huge crack appeared in the ground within 5 meters of the Twilight armor. The 3 mages of the base team did not have time to react and were instantly turned into white light. Seeing this, everyone's expressions changed, and they quickly retreated. Wuji shouted, "Old cow, quickly pull the aggro." Chapter 337. In Rebirth, most Beast-type bosses were Strength-type bosses. Adhering to the concept of one brute force, these bosses' attack priority was especially high. Under the level suppression of 25 levels, even a hard control skill like Dark Barrier would not have the slightest effect. To be honest, even Wang Yu did not have a particularly effective way to deal with a boss like the Twilight armor, which had high attack, HP, and priority. After the Twilight armor killed 3 people, it lay on the ground again, its eyes shining. Wang Yu received Wuji's command, took out the Fire Dragon gun, and fired a shot at the Twilight armor. 5,112 inches order to ensure that he held the Twilight armor's aggro. Wang Yu used a flame magazine. In addition to the suppression of the dragon's might, the flame magazine also added dragon flame damage. Coupled with the critical hit effect, the Twilight armor dealt over 5,000 damage. The Twilight armor's aggro was immediately pulled by Wang Yu. Buzz! The Twilight sacred armor let out a cry. It lowered its head mechanically and charged at Wang Yu. Wang Yu could save 7 people in a row, so dodging an attack of this level was naturally not a problem. Wang Yu used the staff in his hand, dodging the Twilight armor's attack, and landed lightly on the Twilight armor's back. As a system mode monster, the Twilight armor would have a very long stun and turn motion after using Heroic Ram. Taking advantage of this gap, Wang Yu rushed forward with a burst fist without saying a word, punching and kicking at the Twilight sacred armor. 2 4 5 7 3 3 2 4 4 2 5 4. A string of damage values appeared on the Twilight armor's body. Seeing this, the others also began to attack. The Twilight armor took a full 3 seconds to turn around. In those 3 seconds, everyone took nearly 30,000 damage, with Wang Yu taking nearly half of the damage himself. The Twilight armor's aggro was firmly on Wang Yu. Buzz! The Twilight armor let out another low roar, lowered its head, and disappeared in front of everyone again. Everyone hurriedly retreated. With the previous lesson, everyone had learned their lesson. At this time, there was no one within 5 meters of Wang Yu. Wang Yu knew that the boss aggro was on him, so when the Twilight armor burrowed in the ground, Wang Yu immediately switched his weapon to his staff form and carefully observed the ground. Boom! A few seconds later, the ground trembled and there was a loud noise. The Twilight armor broke out of the ground under Wang Yu and opened its mouth to swallow Wang Yu. Kiki! Wang Yu knew that the Twilight armor would open its mouth to bite him. He smiled and leaped up. The long staff in his hand stood on the side of his body like a single plank bridge. He placed it on the mouth of the Twilight armor. Although Wang Yu escaped the fate of being swallowed by the Twilight armor, the Twilight armor was so strong that it directly sent Wang Yu flying. In midair, Wang Yu calmly adjusted his balance and then used Eagle Stamp to quick recover. Who knew that at this moment, Wang Yu would be sent flying directly above the pool. Wang Yu did not look at his feet and fell into the water with a splash. At this time, the Twilight armor spread its wings and flew over. Wang Yu was just about to flash away, but he saw the twilight armor hover in mid-air, tilted its body, and landed outside the pool. Oh! After everyone dispersed, they had been staring at Wang Yu and the twilight armor. This scene fell into everyone's eyes. Seeing this scene, Wuji was happy that the twilight armor did not dare to go into the pool. Wuji immediately said in surprise, "Everyone, quickly go into the pool." After receiving the order, everyone hurriedly ran to the pool. At this time, the twilight armor skills had ended, and it buried its head into the pool again. When Wuji and the others saw this, they all jumped into the pool. When everyone jumped into the pool, the twilight armor seemed to have lost its target and was completely frozen there. How could they let go of such a good opportunity? Under Wuji's order, everyone jumped out of the pool and rushed to the side of the twilight armor to attack it. When the twilight armor used its skills again, everyone returned to the pool. The twilight armor was stunned again. In fact, the twilight armor was quite difficult to deal with. Heroic Ram was easy to dodge, but Burrow Ambush and Earth Splitter were extremely shameless. Although they took a long time to cast, they were all skills that could one-shot a player. Moreover, once they were cast, there was no way to dodge them. If it weren't for Wang Yu's agility, it would be extremely difficult to dodge the twilight armor. If it were any other team, they would have been annihilated by the twilight armor in less than 10 rounds if they hadn't discovered the pool bug. However, without the threat of Drill Ambush and Earth Shatter, Chuanjin's team fought with ease. When the enemy advanced, we retreated. When the enemy was stationed, we harassed. When the enemy was tired, we attacked. When the enemy retreated, we chased. Under the command of Wuji, everyone deeply understood the essence of the Sparrow battle. As long as the twilight armor skills were on cooldown or were stunned, the group of people would rush up and attack it. Every attack could take away tens of thousands of the twilight armor's HP. Fortunately, the twilight scarab's HP was high enough. After 20 minutes or so, the twilight scarab's HP finally fell to 30%. Buzz! After being ravaged for so long, the twilight armor finally became a wife. It flew backward, and a red light sprinkled down, covering the twilight armor's shell with a layer of red light. Seeing this, everyone hurriedly cast Detect on the twilight armor. A new status appeared on the twilight armor's attribute pane. Twilight armor uses the power of the twilight to create an armor that is immune to all damage. Buzz! The twilight armor spread its wings and flew above the pool. It provocatively circled in a circle and landed next to the pool. Wuji frowned and said, "Range classes try to attack it." Little One knocked an arrow, and Mingdu raised his staff. A lightning bolt and an arrow landed on the twilight armor, but the result was not even the slightest bit of damage. It did not even cause the twilight armor to lose HP. Damn, another boss with an invincible aura. Wuji said angrily. There were generally two types of bosses that could evolve in Rebirth. One was the shape-shifting boss, and the other was the boss with status. The shape-shifting boss was more common. When its HP fell to 30%, it would change its form and fight to the death. Although it was difficult to deal with, it was not shameless. As long as the players cooperated well, they could be killed. The boss with status was more of a headache. This kind of boss was very shameless. If the players could not find a breakthrough point, it was very likely that they would be counterattacked. So, fighting this kind of boss not only depended on strength, but also on brains. It was quite annoying. Of course, this kind of boss with status was not impossible. As long as one observed carefully enough, they could find a breakthrough point. According to the experience of Chuanjin's previous bosses, Wuji came to a conclusion. The boss's invincible state was like a poison that had an antidote within 100 steps. The breakthrough point must be found in the same place. Chapter 338. Haha! Wuji was racking his brain to find a way to break through the Twilight's sacred armor when he suddenly heard a commotion behind him. Wuji turned around and saw Yang Na's angry face. She was pressing Mingdu's head into the water with one hand. Mingdu's two hands were constantly struggling, but with his weak body as a mage, it was useless. to place one's pride, and the others not only did not go up to stop the fight, but instead looked on with a face of schadenfreude. Even Wang Yu, the good guy, was crossing his arms with a face of joy. When Base Team and Blood Alliance saw this scene, they were shocked. They never would have thought that Xuanjin's people would be so ruthless to their own people. Seeing this scene, Wuji immediately guessed that Mingdu must have taken advantage of Yang Na and was caught red-handed. "What's going on?" Wuji curiously asked to place one's pride. To place one's pride laughed wretchedly. "This bitch, splashing water on Sister Qingxue." Hee hee. To place one's pride said, as he turned to look at Yang Na. Wuji followed to place one's pride's gaze and saw that Yang Na's chest was wet. Female players' clothes were already revealing, especially archers. After being splashed by Mingdu, Yang Na's figure was completely exposed. Although Yang Na's figure was average, in this virtual world where there were many wolves and little meat, it was still a touch of spring. TSK, TSK, TSK. Wuji was also a pervert and couldn't help but marvel at Yang Na. She even used such a despicable method. When it came to being despicable, no one could surpass Mingdu. However, Mingdu's brain was clearly not working well. He had chosen the wrong target. This girl's savageness was second only to Wang Yu. Wasn't he just seeking death? Gulp, 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 the water kept bubbling. It seemed that even after being pressed into the water, Mingdu's mouth was still so messy. Wang Yu saw the water bubbling and thought that Mingdu couldn't hold on any longer. He quickly pulled Yang Na. "That's enough if you really drown him." Although teammates couldn't hurt each other in Rebirth, water and fire were external forces. Before learning the diving skill, players could easily drown. Yang Na was not the kind of person to hold a grudge. After teaching Ming Do a lesson, the anger in her heart had already been vented. Hearing Wang Yu's advice, she simply took the opportunity to let go of Ming Do. Ming Du raised his head and glared at Chun Xiang. Chun Xiang quickly interrupted. "Little Ming, look at what you've done. I really have to scold you." To place one's pride, Wuji and the others were old friends with Chun Xiang. Hearing the conversation between Ming Du and Chun Xiang, they immediately reacted. No wonder Ming Du could do such a thing. So was this wretched Chun Xiang who instigated it. This old thing. Ming Du was furious. "You mother of asterisk her. You were the one who told me to do it." Chun Xiang sternly said, "Brat, if you know you're in the wrong, then change." Elegance and steadiness are synonymous with this old man. How could this old man do such a thing? This wasn't the first time Chun Xiang had done such a thing. Even Wang Yu's first kill steal was instigated by Chun Xiang. At this time, there was no evidence and no one could do anything to him. Wuji sighed in sympathy and then advised Ming Du. All right, stop messing around. We're clearing a dungeon. Be serious. I was just thinking about something, but you guys have messed it up." "What are you thinking about?" Ming Du asked. "You said that the dung beetle doesn't dare to come closer. Is it because this pool restrains him?" Wuji asked. "Restrains him?" Ming Du muttered. He skillfully scooped up a handful of water and splashed it on the twilight armor. The twilight armor didn't dodge, nor did it react. Seeing that the water had no effect, Wuji was puzzled. Is there a secret at the bottom of the pool? Right after Wuji said that, Ming Du's eyes suddenly lit up. "That's right, I think I saw something at the bottom of the pool." "What is it? Where is it? Bring me there." Wuji hurriedly shouted. "It's over there." Ming Du pointed at the place where he had been taught a lesson. It was at the center of the pool. Wuji walked over and put his head into the water to take a look. As expected, there was a small golden platform at the center of the pool. Wuji reached out and knocked on it, but there was no reaction. It seemed that he hadn't used enough strength. "Try it, Bao San." Wuji called out to Bao San. Bao San aimed at the position Wuji was pointing at, pulled out his great sword, and slammed it down. Clack! After a soft sound, a golden light spread out from Bao San's blade. In just a few seconds, the golden light filled the entire pool. System notification. You have opened the seal left behind by the Twilight God. Your weapon has received the Twilight God's blessing. Everyone looked at their weapons when they saw this system notification. There was an additional status on their weapons. True Twilight Power. The purest holy power of the twilight god, Calpheus, can purify all evil auras. Lasts for 60 minutes. Ineffective outside of the sunset shrine. Purify evil auras? Does it mean this guy isn't a range class? Let's try again. Wuji ordered. The archer mage used a skill on the twilight armor. 124, 225, 2 damage values floated up above the twilight armor's head. The twilight armor trembled as if it was being burned, and it hurriedly took a few steps back. Wuji rubbed his chin as he stared at the twilight armor. The effect isn't worth mentioning, but at least it broke through its defense. But I still feel like something's wrong. Little One said, "What's wrong? It's already good enough that it can deal damage." Compared to the damage immunity from before, the 3-digit damage was a huge improvement. Old cow, can you flip it over? Wuji suddenly asked Wang Yu. Wang Yu was speechless. Damn, I'm not Superman. No matter how strong Wang Yu was, a Grandmaster of Combat wasn't a strength-based class. Flipping over a boss with the size of the twilight armor was practically challenging the rules of the system. Didn't you provoke a spider spirit before? Wuji asked. Andariel's spider form was a bit smaller than the twilight armor. Logically speaking, if Wang Yu could challenge an Ariel, he could also challenge the twilight armor. Wang Yu said in a professional tone, Andariel has a high base and is a mage-type monster. Its physical attack is low, but now that you mentioned it, I've thought of a good idea. Wuji said happily, tell me about it. Just watch. Wang Yu waved at Yin Lao Air and Crimson Wall. You two, follow me. Strength represented charisma. Wang Yu's reputation in the team was quite high. Seeing that Wang Yu was calling for them, Yin Lao Air and Crimson Wall jumped out of the pool regardless of the danger. Wang Yu pointed to the right and whispered a few words to the two of them. The two of them nodded and stood at the position that Wang Yu pointed at. At that moment, the twilight armor saw that Wang Yu had finally jumped out of the pool. It immediately turned around, lowered its body, and used heroic ram on Wang Yu. Good. Wang Yu held his staff with both hands and stepped forward. He lowered his center of gravity and struck the side of the twilight armor with his staff. Ram him. Chapter 339. The twilight armor's momentum was ferocious. Wang Yu used the momentum to swing his staff at the twilight armor's side. Half of the twilight armor's body was lifted off the ground. At this moment, Yin Lao Air and the Crimson Great Walls Collide landed on the twilight armor's body. A shield warrior's collide skill had much higher priority than a weapon warrior's, so the twilight armor was knocked upside down. Wang Yu was also sent flying by the twilight armor's immense force. Although Wang Yu did his best to neutralize the force, the gap between the two was too great. While the twilight armor sent Wang Yu flying, it also dealt 60 damage to Wang Yu. Attack its abdomen. Wuji hurriedly ordered when he saw the twilight armor fall to the ground. Everyone immediately launched their attacks. 21548891245. A string of numbers appeared above the twilight armor's head. The twilight armor's HP fell at a rate visible to the naked eye. Under everyone's attacks, the twilight armor struggled with all its might. Just as it was about to turn over, Wang Yu descended from the sky and stomped on the twilight armor's head, knocking it to the ground. Immediately afterward, everyone's magic arrows, swords, and daggers caught up. As everyone's weapons were buffed with the twilight god's blessing, the damage they dealt to the twilight armor was particularly high. In just a few rounds, the twilight armor's HP was empty, and it became a corpse. Damn it, I'm so tired, Wang Yu said as he wiped the sweat off his forehead. Not only was the twilight armor particularly tanky, but it also had brute force. Wang Yu was having a hard time dealing with it. The others weren't faring any better. While it was true that everyone's weapons had been blessed, if not for Wang Yu repeatedly stomping on the twilight holy armor, it would have long since turned the tables. Everyone had been dealing damage to the twilight holy armor under the dual pressure of their mental and physical attacks. The difference in levels of 25 was no joke. Yin Lao Air sat on the ground and asked Wuji, "How did you know that this thing had to be flipped?" "Very simple." "What do you mean?" Yin Lao Air was confused. "This thing doesn't have armor on its stomach," Wu Ji said with a smile. Eh. Yin Lao Air was stunned. It's indeed simple. Let's loot the equipment. Wu Ji looked around and asked, who's looting? The people from Chuanjin all volunteered, while the people from Blood Alliance and Base looked toward Wang Yu. The Twilight Divine Armor's victory was all thanks to Wang Yu. If such a glorious mission wasn't given to Wang Yu, it would be unreasonable. When Wu Ji saw that everyone was looking at Wang Yu, he chuckled and walked straight to his boss. He reached out his hand and touched it. Facing everyone's doubtful gazes, Wu Ji said shamelessly, I'm Old Cow's agent. I'll touch it on his behalf. Wang Yu said with a cold face, if you want to touch it, then touch it. Don't ever call me agent again. Why? Wu Ji didn't understand. Last time when he helped Blood Alliance clear the Black Wind Cave, he didn't seem to mind the term. Wang Yu said, because I recently realized that it's not a good term. Everyone was speechless. Wu Ji's luck had always been better than Wang Yu's. He reached out and took out a two-handed shield. Shield of Twilight Attack, 40-50 mana, 40-50 physical defense, 100-100 magic defense, 100-100 strength, 15 vitality, 20 durability, 100-000 class requirement, shield warrior level requirement, 30 Twilight set, 13 Twilight shield, 11 Twilight glory, 1 Twilight leap, 1 set, stats boundless Twilight. Passive skill, max HP increases by 1500 Twilight protection. Passive skill, physical defense and magic defense increases by 30 Twilight baptism. Passive skill, recovers 3 HP per second in battle. After leaving the battle, the recovery increases to 9. Twilight armor. Active skill puts armor on a target. The target will appear as a giant. In giant state, the target will absorb 10 damage. Physical damage increased by 40, strength increased by 40, max HP increased by 20, and all speed decreased by 20. Set. The first piece of equipment was a set. Wu Ji's luck was indeed better than Wang Yu's. Seeing this giant shield, Yin Lao Air and Blood Great Wall started drooling. Even though Yin Lao Air had gotten the Guardian set in the early stages of the game, no matter how strong it was only level 10 equipment. Even though it wasn't too weak now, it wasn't the best either. It could only be considered second-rate. Blood Great Wall didn't need to be mentioned. Shield-type weapons weren't produced high. Even if Blood Great Wall was doing well in Blood Alliance, the shield in his hand was still a common item. When the two of them saw the Twilight Shield, they couldn't wait to rush up and snatch it. Little Six from Base Battle Team also coveted the shield, but his team contribution was too low. He didn't participate when the Twilight armor was destroyed, so he could only watch as the shield was taken by the two of them. You two roll. Wu Ji looked at the two of them and said casually. Yin Lao Air had already taken out his die. As soon as Wu Ji said that, he threw 12. Everyone looked at Yin Lao Air speechlessly, revealing a sympathetic expression. To place one's pride walked over and patted Yin Lao Air's shoulder. You're stronger than me. To place one's pride threw a 2. Yin Lao sighed and said, not much stronger. Let's work hard together. The two of them held hands and tears filled their eyes. Blood Great Wall laughed out loud and threw a 16. He won by a small margin. Everyone sweated. We're all shield bearers like that. Yin Lao Air really lost this time. Blood Great Wall wiped the sweat off his forehead and took the shield. At the same time, he felt lucky. At that moment, Yin Lao Air suddenly asked, am I selling this shield? Blood Great Wall was stunned. He had never faced such a question before. I'm not planning on selling it. Sorry. Blood Great Wall paused. He hadn't even warmed up his equipment enough, so how could he sell it just like that? I'll pay 200 gold. Yin Lao Air made a hand gesture towards Blood Great Wall. 200, damn, he's really rich. Blood Alliance and Base Battle Team were shocked by Yin Lao Air's wealth. Even if they opened up the purchase of gold, most of the gold was reserved for players with money. Normal players were still poor. 200 gold wasn't a small amount. Although the shield was part of a set, it didn't have the other two pieces. It was just a whiteboard with high stats. 200 gold was definitely worth it. The Blood Great Wall hesitated for a moment, then nodded fiercely. Sell. Chapter 340. After distributing the shield, Wuji lowered his head and continued looting. Very quickly, Wuji pulled out a book. Fire Rune. Earth-shattering smash. Rare skill. Jump high and hit the ground with your weapon, attacking enemies within a 500-meter radius and causing them to be knocked into the air. Class requirement. Warrior, Paladin. This was an AoE and crowd control skill, equivalent to a weakened version of Collapsing Mountain. Only, it lacked a displacement effect. However, Collapsing Mountain was a level 40 advanced skill, so Earth Splitter was considerably valuable at this stage of the game. Warrior, Paladin role. Wuji showed the skill book and said, in the battle just now, other than Wang Yu and the two shield bearers, everyone else's contribution points were about the same. At this time, they could only roll. After a round of rolling, Crimson Blade was the luckiest. He rolled 90 points and won earth-shattering smash. Although this instance dungeon was a hell mode dungeon, the Twilight Divine Armor's grade was not high, and it was not an open mode boss. Therefore, other than the shield and skill book at the beginning, the following items were very ordinary. There were only a few pieces of silver equipment. Wang Yu and the others did not want them, so they were distributed among the people outside of the Quanjin sect. After passing through the main hall of the Sunset Temple, Wang Yu and the others arrived at the second floor of the temple. The second floor was no longer a palace. It was as if they were inside the Sunset Mountains. After walking out of the main hall, they saw a cliff that was a few meters wide. Diagonally below the cliff was the path. Wuji walked at the front and looked down. The cliff was so deep that they could not see the bottom. If they fell in, they would definitely fall out of the dungeon. There should be a bridge nearby. Wuji looked around and mumbled. Wang Yu laughed. It's just a small distance. We can jump over it in an instant. There's no need for traps. Wuji said angrily. Why don't you try jumping first? Currently, no matter if it was leveling up or clearing dungeons, players had jumped high before. However, they had never jumped that far. As such, even the players themselves did not know how far they could jump. If they died in a hell mode dungeon, they would suffer losses. No one dared to joke around with their lives. I'll jump then. Wang Yu chuckled. He took 2 steps forward. Without using any skills, he leapt over the cliff, somersaulted in mid-air, and nimbly landed on the opposite side. Come over quickly. It's very close. You can jump over. Wang Yu waved his hand and shouted. Wuji was stunned for a moment and shouted, You don't count. Wang Yu could jump more than 10 meters at a time, like it was a game. In his eyes, a distance that was not a problem could very well cause someone to die. As soon as Wuji finished his sentence, to place one's pride leaped to catch up. Although they were both grandmasters of combat, to place one's pride couldn't guarantee that he would be able to jump over them. Hence, he activated the burst punch skill and easily jumped over them. Look, to place one's pride even jumped over here, Wang Yu continued. Wuji was still unmoved. Chick is a grandmaster of combat, and I'm a cleric. How can they be the same? Grandmasters of combat had the highest jumping power among the 7 major classes. Clerics were classes that didn't use all 4 limbs, so their jumping power wasn't much stronger than Guardian Knights. How could Wuji dare to compare himself to place one's pride? When Yin Lao Air saw to place one's pride jump over with a skill activated, he ran a few steps to the edge of the cliff and activated the charge skill. The terrain on the opposite side of the cliff was much lower than where everyone was. Although the charge skill couldn't jump over as smoothly as the burst punch skill, the skill's distance was determined by the system. Yin Lao Air drew a diagonal line as he fell and landed on the opposite side. When Bao San, Blood Great Wall, and the others saw this, they all followed suit and rushed over with their skills activated. Wuji looked at the group of people on the opposite side, then looked at the archer and thief behind him and said, You guys can teleport. Before Wuji could finish his sentence, Yang Na also jumped over. When Mingji and Dao Shui, North Xiuyu, and the other agility classes saw Yang Na jump over, they all became confident and jumped over to the opposite side. At this moment, only Mingdu, Chun Xiang, and Bloody Explosion were left beside Wuji. Wuji's face darkened. Sigh. Only a few of us level 3 cripples are left to depend on each other. Hee hee. Mingdu laughed coldly and teleported to the opposite side. Brother Chun. Wuji turned to look at Chun Xiang, only to see Chun Xiang turn into a cloud of black mist and float over. Bloody Explosion had no choice but to put away his weapon and jump forward. Perhaps it was because he did not calculate the distance or something, but Bloody Explosion fell when he was less than 10 centimeters away from the opposite side. Fortunately, Wang Yu was at the edge of the cliff. With a cloud grasp, he pulled Bloody Explosion back up. It was a close shave, but Bloody Explosion's face was pale. At this moment, the only one who did not jump over was Wuji. Jump! Bao San was furious when he saw that Wuji was still hesitating. He slashed down with his great sword and shouted anxiously. Wuji shook his head. We'll fall. I'll catch you. What are you afraid of? Wang Yu said. Wuji still shook his head. What if I can't catch you? Bullshit. Wang Yu was furious. I won't catch you. You're not afraid, are you? Wuji was stunned and immediately said, I've never been afraid of anyone. Then jump. I'll fall. Damn, it was back to square one again. At this moment, Mingdu was impatient. He walked to the front of the group, pointed his staff forward, and switched places with Wuji. Then, with a teleportation, he flew back. Wuji said in disbelief, I actually came back. Coward. The Chuanjin people gave Wuji the middle finger. They all said that those who were not afraid of death were afraid of those who were shameless. They did not expect this shameless guy to be afraid. With Wuji's thick skin, he obviously did not care about the mockery. He said calmly, let's go. Stop wasting time. Who knew who was wasting time just now? When they arrived at the opposite side of the cliff, they saw that the second floor of the Sunset Temple was a huge cave. The path on this side of the cliff spiraled downwards. At the bottom was a bright red patch, which should be where the second boss was. Everyone followed this path and walked straight ahead. After taking a few steps, Wang Yu suddenly shouted, Quickly get down. Chuanjin's people were already used to Wang Yu's alertness. So when Wang Yu shouted for them to get down, they naturally got down. Although the Blood Alliance people's reactions were not fast enough, they knew that following Chuanjin's people was the right choice. Seeing that all of Chuanjin's people got down, they also got down. Only the base team didn't understand what was going on and stood there stupidly, not knowing what to do. At this moment, a huge round ball covered in sharp spikes swung over, brushing past the backs of Chuanjin and the Blood Alliance people. Then, white light flashed. Other than Thief Little 5 and Archer Little 1, the other 4 members of the base team were also killed. D*MN, there's actually a trap, everyone said in shock. Chapter 341. Genius 1, second remember if you want to go. To provide you with wonderful novels to read. Traps are not rare in online games. However, in a keyboard and mouse online game, everyone had an omniscient view, or a 3D view. There would be signs before a trap was activated. Therefore, as long as the activation frequency of the trap was calculated, it was not too difficult to hide. However, in the holographic simulation online game mode, everyone had a first-person view. The visibility in the cave was very low, and the trap was silent and undetectable. If it were not for Wang Yu's reminder, perhaps at least half of them would have been killed. Moreover, the holographic simulation was completely immersive. The moment the big iron ball flew past, it cast a shadow in everyone's heart. After the iron ball flew far away, everyone crawled on the ground for a while. Mingdu muttered as he got up, Damn, I was so scared that I almost peed. Do you want to die? Wang Yu suddenly reached out and pressed Mingdu to the ground. There was another whistling sound, and the big iron ball flew back. At the same time, a few arrows were shot and flew past Mingdu's scalp. Mingdu was shocked and broke out in a cold sweat. Seeing this, Wuji took out his precious glasses and looked forward with his hand to cover his eyes. The light in this cave was very dim, so the archer's eagle eye did not work here. On the other hand, Wuji's glasses not only increased his field of vision, but also had night vision, so he could see the road ahead clearly. Damn, there are at least dozens of traps along the way. After taking off his glasses, Wuji cursed angrily. The bottom of this road was only 100 meters away, but there were dozens of traps installed. This did not include the iron ball flying around. The system was really afraid that it would not kill people. Hearing Wuji's words, everyone's face showed a look of horror. They had not even cleared half of the dungeon, and already 8 people had died. There were so many fatal traps along the way. It was estimated that everyone would be killed before they could reach the bottom. What should we do? We can't just lie here and not move, right? The Crimson Great Wall asked. Mingdu thought about it and said, we can crawl forward. As he said that, Mingdu even made a crawling posture. After all, he was not a professional. Mingdu's actions were extremely wretched. Everyone was sweating profusely. As expected of a slut, even the idea she came up with was so cheap. Yang Na looked at Mingdu's demeanor and said fiercely, I'd rather die than do such an action. Then what do you have in mind? Mingdu turned around and asked Yang Na. No. Yang Na shook her head. That's it. Mingdu spread his hands. Everyone was silent. Although Mingdu's idea was quite despicable, it was still an effective method. Wuji sneered. Do you think all the mechanisms are in the air? The third mechanism in front is from the bottom to the top. At that time, I'll poke 100 holes in you. F***CK. Then what do you think we should do? Mingdu was at his wit's end. At this moment, Chun Xiang extended his hand to Wuji and said, lend me your spectacles. Love go small, say, Netka. Wuji raised his eyebrows and asked in surprise, oh, there are so many mechanisms, and they're so far away. Can you do it? Yes. Let's make a bet if you don't believe me, Chun Xiang said with a smile. Bet your ass. Wuji was exasperated. He took out the spectacles and handed them to Chun Xiang. He reminded him again, BF** King quick. This thing loses some durability every minute you wear it. There's no way to fix it. Got it. Chun Xiang took the spectacles from Wuji and looked forward. At the same time, he muttered, the distance the metal ball moves is, according to the time, just now, the speed should be the interval between the javelins and the arrows. Just like that, Chun Xiang looked for close to a minute before taking off the spectacles and passing them to Wuji. He then said to everyone, follow me later and do whatever I tell you to do. If not, I won't care about burying you if you die. Got it. Stop the bullsh*t and hurry up. Xuanzhen's people all rushed him. Although Blood Alliance and Base Battle Team were confused by Chun Xiang's actions, seeing that Xuanzhen and the others had already expressed their stance, they naturally didn't dare to say anything against it. Chun Xiang said, what's the rush? The metal ball will fly back now. After it flies back, we can leave. Just as Chun Xiang finished speaking, the giant metal ball flew above them. Don't move, Chun Xiang shouted and suddenly stood up. Then, he suddenly laid down. After a few arrows flew past, Chun Xiang said, we can go. As he said that, Chun Xiang walked to the front. Everyone followed closely behind. After walking for around 5 seconds, Chun Xiang suddenly said, stay to the left. Hearing this, everyone hurriedly leaned against the left wall. Then a giant axe fell from the sky and landed on their right. Everyone stuck to the left wall and walked for 3 seconds. Chun Xiang then said, stay to the right. With the scene just now, everyone naturally didn't dare to go against Chun Xiang's orders. They hurriedly stood to the right. At that moment, a row of spears suddenly appeared from the left wall. Everyone continued forward. After another 10 seconds, Chun Xiang suddenly said, stop, there are earth spears in front. Once the mechanism is gone, quickly charge over and then lie down. Listen to my orders. Everyone nodded. At that moment, right in front of Chun Xiang, a bunch of spears appeared from the ground. Charge! After the earth spears landed, Chun Xiang gave the order. Everyone quickly charged past the earth spear area. Chun Xiang shouted again, lie down. Everyone quickly bent down, and with another whoosh of wind, the big iron ball swung back again. After a few commands from Chun Xiang, everyone's coordination became more and more tacit. Along the way, they moved left or right, jumped or crawled. Under Chun Xiang's precise command, everyone finally walked out of the mechanism area. Along the way, there were many mechanisms. Although they didn't cause any physical harm, the mental and psychological stimulation was unbearable. Wuji looked at the time. Just this stretch of road. They actually walked for a full 5 minutes. Of course, this was already very fast. After all, apart from dodging the mechanisms, they didn't stop at all. If it was any other team, without Chun Xiang's precise command, they probably wouldn't even have walked out in 10 minutes. Among them, the ones who were the most shocked were the people outside of Chuanjin. They were all knowledgeable people. In online game dungeons, dungeons with mechanisms were often the hardest to conquer. For a dungeon like this, the pioneering team would have to be wiped out at least 8 to 10 times before they could accurately calculate the release frequency of the mechanisms and the specific path. However, Chun Xiang had only looked into the distance for less than a minute. It was as if he had walked hundreds of times. From start to finish, he didn't stop and didn't make the slightest mistake. Such an ability that was close to a superpower wasn't the least bit inferior to the shock that Wang Yu's godlike skills brought to everyone. What shocked Little One and Little Five even more was that Xuanjin's people didn't seem surprised at all. It was as if this was to be expected. If it was a newbie, it would be fine if they couldn't see the technical content. But could these experts not see it? The answer was naturally no. From this, it could be seen that Chun Xiang's ability was very common in the eyes of this group of monsters from Xuanjin. What a perverted group of people they were. Chapter 342. Genius 1, second remember if you want to go. Talk.net, providing you with exciting novels to read. Looking at the Xuanjin players chatting happily, Little One finally understood what the Scarlet Wall had said before entering the dungeon. They really weren't being modest. What Little One did not understand was why such a group of monsters were unknown on the team leaderboard. Perhaps these experts were indifferent to fame and fortune. Little One had a deep impression of the Xuanjin players. Love, go, Little Say, net could the second floor of the Sunset Temple had the same layout as the first floor, except for the cave. The monsters on the first floor were trigger type, while the monsters on the second floor were stragglers. Controlled Twilight Believer, LV45, Elite, HP, 100000 MP, 50,000 skills, Twilight Flame, Energy Blessing. Twilight Guard Puppet, LV45, Elite, HP, 150000 MP, 10,000 skills, Charge, Shield Bash Fallen Twilight Archer, LV45, Elite Skills, Multi-Shot, Crippling Arrow. The three monsters were a standard Archer and Priest combination. The Twilight Believer was a mage monster. Twilight Flame dealt high damage, and Energy Boost was a healing skill. The Twilight Guard was a tank that could use Charge and Shield Bash. It had strong crowd control and defense. The Twilight Archer was the main damage dealer, and Crippling Arrow was a soft control skill that could slow down enemies. These monsters formed groups of 3 and wandered aimlessly throughout the temple. System notification. Your party has activated the dungeon quest Liberation. Kill all monsters in the scene. Quest reward. 15% completion background introduction. An evil force controlled the believers of the Twilight God and enslaved their souls in the hope that one day someone would help them free themselves. Although this combination of monsters was difficult to deal with, compared to the first floor's chain beetle mines, these stragglers were much easier to deal with. No matter how complete the combination of monsters was, it was still just a set of data. In front of the players, who had an absolute advantage in terms of numbers and intelligence, they had no advantage at all. Moreover, the weapons in Wang Yu's party were all blessed by the Twilight God, which gave them a decent damage bonus. Basically, they could kill a group of monsters in 2 rounds. It didn't take long for everyone to reach the end of the temple. At the end of the temple was a huge throne on which sat an old man in a red robe. Mad Twilight Pope, Herald, LV, Gold Boss, Elite, HP, 80000 MP, 500000 skills, Blood Barrier, Twilight Judgment, Twilight Sword, Slave Sacrifice. Background introduction. The increasingly peaceful life diluted the faith of the people. The disappointed Herald led his followers away from the land of sorrow. He always thought that it was the peace that caused the people to lack respect for God. So they fell into the trap of the evil god and were tempted to become slaves. Seeing Harold's background introduction, the crowd thought to themselves, "This old faker turns out to be an extremist who has been blinded by his beliefs." At this moment, the name and description above Harold's head were both green. Green represented an NPC that could not be attacked and could only be activated through the storyline. After Wuji commanded everyone to destroy the last group of monsters, Harold slowly regained consciousness. "Why'd you do this?" After waking up, Harold abruptly stood up and asked in an incomparably dignified manner. However, this question was very abrupt, and everyone was a little puzzled. Fortunately, Wang Yu and the others' answer was also very strong. "To complete the quest, foolish and faithless fellows. We have already left that filthy city, and you still want to kill us?" Wuji bluffed. "It is your god. Let me free you." "God!" Harold was slightly taken aback, and then he laughed maniacally. "Ha ha! God has long since abandoned us. It is all because of you, faithless people. Bear the wrath of God." Harold shouted loudly, and the icon above his head suddenly turned red. At the same time, he waved his hand, and a dark red barrier surrounded the whole party. The dark red barrier was similar to the Warlock's dark barrier. Both were used to trap the enemy. The only difference was that Harold's barrier could only trap the enemy, and not the target. Moreover, Harold's level was relatively high, so the barrier did not have a preset channeling time. It was an instant cast. Thus, when Harold suddenly attacked, no one could evade it. An elite boss was truly sinister. While they were chatting, he suddenly attacked. There was no professional ethics at all. "Accept your judgment," Harold shouted loudly, and the beads in his hand continuously rotated. Above Wang Yu and the others, a dark red energy ball appeared. Moreover, under Harold's blessing, this energy ball grew larger and smaller. "Damn, this skill is too despicable," everyone cursed. "Surround the enemy in a circle, and then throw an area of effect magic." No matter how high the enemy's evasion ability was, under the absolute coverage of firepower, it would be difficult for them to escape death. Naturally, there were exceptions to everything. Wang Yu and Mingdu both knew the skill of teleportation, and they directly jumped out of the barrier. Seeing the two escape, Chun Xiang hurriedly shouted to Wang Yu and Mingdu, "Hold them off for 3 seconds. I have a way." "All right." Wang Yu nodded. He activated Collapsing Fist and rushed toward Harold. Seeing Wang Yu rushing over, a red light flashed in Harold's hand. His right hand that was not holding the beads pulled out a blood-red longsword, and he swung it at Wang Yu. "Huh? Is the old faker a dual practitioner of magic and martial arts?" Wang Yu was slightly startled. He leaned to the side to avoid Harold's longsword and kicked Harold's face. Harold was kicked out of his floating state. Although it was only for a short moment, it was enough. Due to the skill being interrupted, the judgment energy that had lost its blessings stopped growing and fell down. Everyone inside the barrier had long run to the edge of the barrier, and they avoided the attack of the judgment energy. Chun Xiang had finished preparing his spell. His empty left hand emitted a ball of white light the size of a soccer ball, and it slowly floated to the blood-red barrier. The blood-red barrier fluctuated, and a gap was melted. Great Sage skill, Holy Word. Can break all barrier-type spells. Cooldown time, 50 seconds. Casting time, 3 seconds. MP, 300 cost. This feeling of being caught like a turtle in a jar was clearly not a good one. After Chun Xiang created a gap, everyone escaped from inside. Then, they angrily stood in formation and started attacking Harold. Originally, Harold's martial arts skills were not much, but the Judgment Sword was quite strong. Every strike was able to release a sword chi attack. The sword chi crisscrossed, not giving Wang Yu the slightest chance to cut in. Not to be outdone, Wang Yu switched his weapon to the Heaven and Earth knife. Then, he threw the scabbard in his hand forward, smashing it on Harold's face. Harold's Judgment Sword paused for a moment, and Wang Yu rushed over, grabbed the knife, and stabbed it toward Harold's stomach. However, at this moment, the other people's long-range attacks also flew in front of Harold. Chapter 343. Genius 1, second remember if you want to go. Talk net, providing you with exciting novels to read. Blood-colored barrier. Everyone was shocked. Harold had shrunk the blood-colored barrier and thrown it on himself. What was even more shocking was that the blood-colored barrier had turned into an invincible barrier, blocking all the attacks. At this moment, Harold flipped his long sword and slashed at Wang Yu from left to right. F***CK. Wang Yu, who felt as if he had stabbed a rock, cried out in shock and jumped back, dodging Harold's long sword and jumping into the middle of the crowd. This shameless old man, after putting the barrier on himself, not only could he move, he could also F***king/people. Fortunately, Harold's judgment sword had lost its sword energy effect after he put the barrier on himself. Otherwise, Wang Yu might not have been able to dodge this sudden attack. Harold, who had activated the invincible barrier, was unmoved by force or persuasion. The only gap was the opening of the blood-colored barrier above his head. However, the diameter of the miniaturized blood-colored barrier was too small. Even if Yang Na used a longbow, she wouldn't be able to throw an arrow into such a small space, let alone Yang Na, who was the most skilled archer, who used a crossbow. At this moment, the only thing that could attack Harold was Mingdu's lightning spell. Lightning spell wasn't a directional skill. Harold relied on his high speed to move around randomly. No matter how good Mingdu's prediction was, he couldn't guarantee that he would be able to hit him. Can this guy be any more shameless? Wang Yu shouted as he wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. No one in the team said anything, but Harold used the fact to tell Wang Yu that he could. Harold took a step back and dodged Mingdu's attack range. Then, he put away the judgment sword in his hand and raised both his hands. The red prayer beads were activated once again, and countless red energy balls appeared above everyone. Harold clasped his hands together, and energy balls rained down, forcing everyone to retreat a few meters. Harold didn't back down. As he walked forward, he kept casting spells with both hands, forcing everyone to retreat again and again. Brother Chun, where's the spell you used to break the barrier? Beat him up. To place one's pride, shouted anxiously. Spring Xiang anxiously said, Fight my ass. My skill's casting speed is slow, and it's also slow. If he can dodge Mingdu's lightning skill, how can he not dodge mine? Chun Xiang then said, If only we could make the boss stop. Hearing this, everyone said, TSK, what a joke. Only tanks could stop a boss from moving. Not to mention the fact that Harold's energy balls were raining down on him. Tanks couldn't even get close to him. Even if they could get close to Harold, he had a blood barrier around him. He wasn't afraid of being controlled at all. Who could do anything to him? Mingdu scolded. Bah, you're actually talking nonsense. Do I need you to stop if I can? I killed him with a bolt of lightning. If he didn't have the blood-color barrier, I would have hacked him to death one slash at a time. The others also started to brag. At this moment, Wang Yu suddenly asked Chun Xiang, Can we just stop him from moving? That's right. Chun Xiang nodded and said, Can Brother Iron Ox stop him? Let's try. Although Wang Yu was confident, he didn't dare to guarantee anything. After all, the system was too shameless. Who knew what other despicable tricks this old fellow could use? After saying that, Wang Yu charged straight at Harold. Seeing Wang Yu charging over, Harold waved both his hands, and all the energy balls smashed toward Wang Yu. F***CK, what is Bull God doing? Little one asked, dumbfounded. Wuji said he's showing off his skills. At this moment, Wang Yu stepped into the 7-star position and dodged left and right. It was as if he had activated the clone technique. Without stopping, he quickly charged past the energy ball area and arrived in front of Harold. After Harold got close, he immediately took out the Judgment Sword to deal with the enemy. He held the sword with both hands and slashed down at Wang Yu's head. Wang Yu didn't panic. With a wave of his right hand, he flipped out a long sword and swung it in an arc. It stuck to Harold's Judgment Sword and weakened its power. Then he took out the short sword with his left hand and swung it lightly, sending the Judgment Sword to Harold's feet. The attack power of the Judgment Sword was instantly reduced to nothingness. Harold's first attack was ineffective and almost pierced through his feet. He was immediately enraged. With a roar, he held the sword hilt with both hands and slashed horizontally. Wang Yu squatted down and grabbed the long sword with his right hand. He used the handguard to block Harold's sword and pressed it down. At the same time, the short sword in his left hand moved up slightly. Harold's judgment sword suddenly deviated from its original horizontal slash to an upward slash. As Harold had used too much force, he almost cut his own head. After almost cutting himself twice in a row, Harold was completely enraged. He simply stood where he was and swung his greatsword at Wang Yu. However, the two swords in Wang Yu's hands only defended and didn't attack. He could easily block Harold's attacks every time. No matter how high Harold's level was, it was only because the average level of the players in the dungeon had strengthened him. After all, he was only a level 25 boss. His martial arts and magic skills were very limited. His true strength was far from a real level 50 boss. Therefore, even though Harold had put a blood-colored barrier on himself and his attacks were ineffective, Wang Yu still had a way to hold him back. I won't hit you. I'll let you hit me, all right? The sword technique that Wang Yu was using was called lingering sword. It was a defensive two-handed sword technique. Its main combat method was to find flaws in a fight and launch surprise attacks. This sword technique had a total of 2 styles. The first style was for defense and mainly used to block attacks. The second style was for offense and focused on surprise attacks. In short, it was a very difficult technique to deal with. Wang Yu had already mastered the essence of this sword technique when he was in his teens. Now that he was only using one style, it was naturally incomparably easy for him to deal with. What skill is this? Seeing Harold being held back by Wang Yu, the people from Blood Alliance and Base Battle Team were completely petrified. They were facing a boss. Although this boss looked more like a mage, there was still a 25 level difference. How could there be no damage at all from the slashes? This isn't a skill. Bao San, who was proficient in sword techniques, explained. Then what is it? It's a sword technique. It's kung fu. Bao San's tone was filled with endless respect and yearning. Once upon a time, Bao San also dreamed of becoming a kung fu expert. Therefore, he worked hard to learn sword techniques. However, his talent and conditions were limited, so he could only learn half the skill. Now that he saw Wang Yu's exquisite sword technique, Bao San had the urge to kneel down and worship him as his master. Kung fu. Everyone was dumbfounded. You must be joking. Is there really such a thing in this world? Bao San was speechless. He wiped his sweat and said, "Of course, you can also think of it as manual control." Oh, I understand. Blood Great Wall and the others understood. They secretly criticized. If it's manual control, then it's manual control. What kung fu? The people from Xuanzhen are all abnormal. It seemed that for these gaming otakus, they wouldn't understand things that were too profound, so they had to translate it into a language that they could understand. Chapter 344. Genius in 1 second. Remember, love, go away. The internet provides you with exciting novels to read. It did not matter if it was a skill or a skill. In short, Wang Yu swung his 2 swords and blocked Harold's path. Chun Xiang, who was not far away, cast Holy Word once again. The white ball of light slowly flew to Wang Yu's back. Wang Yu turned around and appeared behind Harold. Harold followed suit and turned around. Then he was struck in the back by the Holy Word technique, and the blood-colored barrier immediately shattered. Focus fire. After Harold's blood-red barrier shattered, Wuji immediately gave the order to focus fire. Yin Lao Air and Great Wall rushed to the left and right, squeezing Harold in the middle. Wang Yu switched his swords to gloves and pulled Harold into his arms. Harold was still a magic-type boss. His close combat skills were not very high. After being cut in by Wang Yu, the master of hand-to-hand combat, he basically lost the ability to fight back. Wang Yu first grabbed Harold with 3 consecutive knee strikes. Then he kicked Harold into the air. Finally, Wang Yu bent down and grabbed Harold's ankle with his right hand. He pulled Harold's legs apart and kicked Harold's crotch with a thunderstomp. Harold's screams of agony were heard from the electric light. Everyone was shocked. Great Wall and the others had played the game for many years. They had never seen anyone trample on a boss like this. This was really an eye-opener. With Wang Yu and the two shield bearers controlling Herald, the damage output of the others was unrestrained. Even Wu Ji was afraid of them. Herald's health bar dropped rapidly. In just 5 to 6 minutes, it had dropped to 30%. Damn it! You people without faith should see the greatness of God. Herald shouted, and a golden light flashed across his body, forcing Wang Yu and the other two to retreat to the side. Then Herald's eyes turned blood red, and the judgment sword and the prayer beads in his hand fused into one, becoming a magic staff. With a wave of the staff, monsters appeared in front of Herald one after another. Sacrificer, LV, 25, HP, 10,000 MP, 10,000 skill. Virus self-destruction. These sacrificers didn't have much health left, but they were extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, they had reached Wang Yu's group. No matter how good Wang Yu's kung fu was, he still belonged to the technical class. This kind of fearless human bomb was what the technical class was most afraid of. After all, no matter how high and fast Wang Yu could jump, he would still have a headache when he encountered something that clung to his thigh and refused to let go. Fortunately, Wang Yu had quick reflexes. He reached out and grabbed the head of the sacrificer who was rushing at the front and threw it back. Then, he quickly jumped back and opened up the distance between him and the sacrificer. Yin Lao air activated roll and rolled backwards, dodging a wave of attacks. Following which, he activated charge and ran away. However, Bloody Great Wall wasn't so lucky. His reaction speed wasn't as fast as Yin Lao Air's, and he didn't have any evasion skills. He was directly hit by the sacrificer at the front. Bang! With a dull sound, the sacrificer exploded into pieces. Fortunately, this game didn't allow for bloody scenes. Otherwise, the sky full of minced meat would disgust everyone to death. Ha! His attack isn't that high. Bloody Great Wall thought that he was going to die from the explosion, but he discovered that his health had dropped by more than 100. A little more than 100 health was nothing for a tank like him with close to 5,000 health. However, the number of sacrificers behind him was still increasing. Each of them had more than 100 health, and they could kill Bloody Great Wall in a matter of minutes. Thinking of this, Bloody Great Wall turned around to run, but he realized that he couldn't. When he looked down at his status, he immediately cursed, F***CK me. The sacrificer's skill was called virus self-destruction. Viruses were the most important, and self-destruction was secondary. At this time, Bloody Great Wall suddenly had a virus status. Virus. All attributes reduced by 50%. Contagious. Range 500. Everyone was shocked when they saw this. Bloody Great Wall, go away. Don't come over. Bloody Great Wall wanted to cry. If I don't go over, I'll be blown to death. Everyone shouted. If you don't come over, you might get blown to death. If you dare come over, we'll kill you right now. F***CK, that's so unloyal. Bloody Great Wall turned around again, took out a precious potion, and poured it into his mouth. Then, he faced the sacrificers again. At this time, Chun Xiang suddenly shouted, Great Wall, move back one step. Although Bloody Great Wall didn't know what Chun Xiang wanted to do, he was very willing to listen to other people's opinions, so he quickly took 2 steps back. At the same time, there was a flash of light, and 6 tall and mighty demons stood in front of Bloody Great Wall, blocking the sacrificers that continued to rush over. F***CK, what is this? Seeing the creatures that Chun Xiang had summoned, everyone was shocked. Demons, Chun Xiang replied calmly. What kind of food does your demon eat? Mingdu shouted in shock. Everyone had seen the demons that Chun Xiang had summoned before. They were thin and short, no different from gnomes. However, the demon that was summoned this time was almost as big as Wang Yu. Chun Xiang waved the Book of Sealing in his hand and said, Look closely, this is a level 25 demon. The Book of Sealing had a summoning space. In the past, the demons that Chun Xiang summoned would disappear after a few levels. With the Book of Sealing, the demons could be summoned back into the summoning space, and their levels would also be preserved. Although the level 25 demon's attack method was the simplest energy attack, its health points had increased to about 10,000. It was definitely the most solid meat shield. Moreover, as a poison-type creature, the demon was actually immune to the Sacrificer's self-destruction virus. When the Sacrificers collided with the demon, they didn't have much effect at all. This way, Bloody Great Wall's life was saved. After blocking the Sacrificers, Chun Xiang threw a green light at Bloody Great Wall. The light covered the Bloody Great Wall's head for less than 2 seconds, and the virus status on the Bloody Great Wall disappeared. Great Sage skill, Dispel. Dispel. Dispel all abnormal statuses on the target player. As the only hidden class in the priest class, the Great Sage was definitely the #1 support class in the world. Apart from his skills that Chun Xiang had learned when he was a warlock, almost all of his other skills were support. Although it killed his damage output, each of his skills was quite powerful. The length of the 6 demons' line of defense was limited. As Herald's Sacrificers increased, the 6 demons gradually couldn't hold on. At this time, Wuji commanded, "Brother Chun, raise the barrier. Oldly, prepare the spells. Then, Old Fish and Dao Shui will go stealthily to restrain Herald. Old Cow, you and Little Chick will interrupt the spells." When the others saw that Wuji only assigned tasks to Wang Yu and the others, they couldn't help but ask Wuji, "What about us? Attack Herald with everything you have." Wuji said. Little One frowned and said, "There are so many monsters in front of us. How are we going to attack?" Among all the classes in the past, the only skill that could be cast from a distance was lightning. Normal players' skills couldn't hit Herald with the Sacrificers in front of them. Wuji smiled and said, "Don't worry. There won't be any later." Chapter 345. Genius 1, second remember if you want to go. Talk Net, providing you with exciting novels to read. As the two exchanged questions and answers, Chun Xiang's dark barrier had finished its channeling. Chun Xiang calculated the speed of the Sacrificers and adjusted the defensive line of the demons. When the dark barrier suddenly rose, it was just enough to trap all the Sacrificers within it. After the Sacrificers were locked in place, Mingdu waved his staff and activated heaven, lightning, earth, and fire. The dark barrier suddenly turned into a sea of fire. The sea of fire flashed with lightning and covered all the Sacrificers. Mingdu's lightning spell and hellfire were both skills with high damage. After being upgraded to heaven, lightning, earth, and fire, the damage output was even higher than the advanced spells in the later stages. Heaven, lightning, earth, and fire was also a continuous damage skill. In less than 3 seconds, more than half of the Sacrificers within the dark barrier had been killed. The area in front of everyone was empty. Seeing that the Sacrificers in front of them had been eliminated, Mingji and Dao Xue and North Cuu activated swift steps and rushed forward, one on the left and one on the right. When Herald saw the two rushing over, he turned his staff, and the newly summoned Sacrificers rushed towards the two assassins. The assassins who activated swift steps were not any slower than the archers. No matter how fast the Sacrificers were, they were still a bit slower than Mingji and Dao Xue and North Cuu. The two unhurriedly brought the Sacrificers and circled behind Herald. At the same time, Wang Yu, into place one's pride, had already activated Collapsing Fist and jumped in front of Herald. Herald was shocked when he saw this. He hurriedly swung his staff at Wang Yu, and to place one's pride. Wang Yu didn't dodge. He grabbed Herald's wrist with his left hand and used Ferocious Tiger Strike to pull him in front of him. Then, he grabbed Herald's neck with his right hand. Under the effect of choke, Herald's summoning skill came to an abrupt halt. Focus fire. Wuji roared, pulling the others back from their shock. In Lao air and the Great Crimson Wall once again surrounded Herald from both sides, preventing him from escaping. Wang Yu, and to place one's pride, took turns to interrupt Herald's skills with Strangle, while the rest of the team dealt damage with everything they had. Herald roared in despair as his HP was emptied. Looking at Herald lying on the ground with his eyes wide open due to his unwillingness and resentment, Little E was so shocked that he was speechless. After a long time, Little One finally couldn't help but ask Wuji with doubt, "Boss Wuji, With your strength, why don't you form a battle team? Although Little One's technique was average, he had been in the pro scene for so long. He had some insight. The strength that Xuanjin had displayed so far wasn't any weaker than a first-rate team in the country. This was especially true for Wang Yu. Although this was a brand new mode, the most important thing to become an expert was mechanics and reaction speed. That was why in-game experts in the past were still ahead of normal players in this game. Little One had seen so many videos of pro teams, but he had never seen such an abnormal person. Battle team, Wuji thought about it and said indifferently, "We don't have enough people, and we don't have much time, so we don't want to do it." A battle team wasn't something that could be formed just because one wanted to. Apart from investment, one also needed a lot of time to train. What's more, the minimum requirement for a battle team was 10 people. Xuanjin previously only had 6 people. Moreover, they were being hunted every day. How could they have the time and resources to form a battle team? We don't have enough people. We don't have time. Little One was defeated by Wuji's reason. The current profits of the esports industry were obvious to all. Esports stars weren't any worse than entertainment stars. Pro players worth millions could be found everywhere. He really didn't know what kind of people Xuanjin was. Such a profitable industry was actually rejected by a single "we don't have time." Wuji, loot the equipment. Loot the equipment. At this moment, Mingdu called out, I'm coming. Hurry your sister." Wuji replied, then left the silent Little One behind and ran over. Although Harold's level was high, that was the result of the average player's level. It was only a gold boss. However, because it was the first kill, the items it dropped were pretty good. Twilight Judgment, rare skill. Uses one's own mana to create an energy ball to attack the target. Class requirement, Cleric. 07's Cleric had already been digested by the Twilight armor on the first floor. At this moment, the only clerics in the team were Wuji and Crimson Cyan Sack. Everyone had seen this skill just now. Although it was powerful, its casting speed and casting speed were very slow. Unless it was a fixed target and had good judgment, it wouldn't be able to hit anyone. It wasn't an exquisite skill. After Wuji and Crimson Cyan Sack rolled, the skill book was taken by Crimson Cyan Sack. Wuji didn't feel the pinch. The second item was a necklace. Twilight Crimson, necklace, silver, damaged, attack, 20-25 mana, 30-40 plus 6 intelligence, plus 15 spirit Twilight power. Passive skill. After killing a target with a spell, MP will be returned to the target by 3%. Crimson Barrier, active skill. Creates a single target barrier that lasts for 10 seconds. Attacks are ineffective against the target within the barrier. Targets within the barrier cannot use ranged attacks. Consumes 200 MP cooldown, 600 seconds. Class requirement, Cleric level requirement, 30 item introduction, a necklace that was blessed by the Twilight God. Later on, it was corroded by the evil power of blood. It is an accessory of Pope Harold. In instance dungeons, once a boss took the item, the next boss wouldn't be able to take it. Crimson Cyan Sack had already taken the skill book. At this moment, Wuji could choose to give a necklace to Mingjian Dao Shui to sell, or keep it for himself. However, as Wuji held the necklace, he felt rather conflicted. Meow, this was a level 30 equipment. Its main attributes weren't much stronger than a level 15 equipment. However, the Crimson Barrier skill made Wuji a little reluctant to throw it away. This was a skill that was equivalent to invincibility. It had to be known that apart from Resurrection, the second signature skill of a holy class was the Holy Light Shield that made the target invincible. Holy Light Shield was an advanced skill that could be learned by holy class players after reaching level 40. There was a limit to using it, and the effect was 8 seconds. On the other hand, not only did Crimson Barrier not have a limit, but its duration was also longer than Holy Light Shield. It was basically an enhanced version of Holy Light Shield. Should he keep this thing, or should he keep a chance to pick up the equipment? If he kept it, this was a hell dungeon. Who knew what other good items there would be? If he didn't keep it, he would lose an excellent life-saving skill. Even someone as smart as Wuji fell into a state of indecision. Take it. Chun Xiang saw Wuji's expression and knew that he was having a difficult time choosing. So he reminded him, "We have so many enemies. One more life-saving skill will increase our chances of survival." When Wuji heard this, he immediately felt relieved. If he had 10 seconds of invincibility during the previous conflict with Gokuraku Jodo, it would be enough for him to run to the safe zone. In Xuanzhen, survival was naturally the most important thing. Thinking of this, Wuji happily stored the Crimson Twilight Necklace and started to loot the next equipment. Chapter 346. The third item that Wuji looted was a staff. From the looks of it, it was the one that Harold was holding. Staff of Summoning Attack. 13 mana. 13 class requirement. Warlock level requirement. 30 item description. A staff that hides a huge secret. King trash. Everyone looked at the staff and felt humiliated. They looked at Wuji with disdain. Your luck has been used up. Someone else will loot it later. It was fine if a gold boss looted a white grade item, but it was a level 30 trash white grade item. The system was simply mocking them. Especially Wuji. He held the staff in disgust and was about to throw it to Mingjian Daoxue when Chun Xiang stopped him. "Give this equipment to me." "What are you going to do with this trash?" Wuji asked, puzzled. Although there was only one warlock in the party, if Chun Xiang took this to pick up trash, he would still have to spend money to buy it the next time a warlock equipment appeared. Chun Xiang smiled and showed the staff in his hand to Wuji. "This thing is useful to me." Wuji looked at Chun Xiang's staff and was shocked. He then passed the staff of summoning over. It seemed that Wuji's luck had been used up. After looting 3 trash items, he did not manage to turn the situation around. The next items that he looted were still trash. Under everyone's disdain, Wuji threw all the trash to Mingjian Daoxue for recycling. Just as Wuji finished looting, the throne that Harold was sitting on let out an ear-piercing sound and moved to the side. Under the throne, a secret passage appeared, leading to the entrance to the 3rd floor of the Sunset Temple. As shield-bearers, Yin Lao Air and Crimson Great Wall went in first. After confirming that there was no danger, the others followed behind and arrived at the 3rd floor of the Sunset Temple. After entering the 3rd floor, everyone was shocked. The name of the 3rd floor was no longer Sunset Temple, but Scarlet Forest. That was right, it was a forest. No one would have thought that there would be a forest deep underground. Fortunately, they were in the game, so they didn't pursue these illogical settings. Other than Wang Yu, who felt his scalp tingle when he saw the forest, the others quickly recovered from their shock. Little One's expression was rather excited. As a jungle survival master, the forest was Little One's home ground. He finally had a chance to perform. The other 3 assassins, Shui, Baiming, Yu Yu, and Little Five, were in a good mood after seeing the forest. In Rebirth, the forest terrain was vast and the gaps in the forest were narrow, so it was more suitable for agility-based professions to survive. This was especially true for archers, who were most suited for ambushes. Assassins were the class that countered archers the most in the game. When they saw this terrain, they were naturally excited. As soon as they entered the Scarlet Forest, the 3 of them used scouting as an excuse to sneak into the forest. The others didn't have stealth skills, so, of course, they didn't dare to be as arrogant as the assassin. Wang Yu was someone who had been educated by the forest, so he couldn't travel alone. So, under Wuji's arrangement, 2 shield-bearers walked in front, and Chun Xiang called his 6 demons to cover the rear. Only then did they cautiously enter the forest. As soon as they entered the forest, they saw the monsters walking towards them. Scarlet Assassin Skills. Fatal Strike. Shadow of Agility Scarlet Sniper HP. 80,000 HP. 10,000 Skills. Forest Trap. Fatal Poison Arrow Scarlet Guards HP. 1500 HP. 10,000 Skills. Heavy Slash. Slash compared to the monsters on the first 2 floors. The monsters in the Scarlet Forest were more solitary. These monsters guarded their own areas and didn't interfere with each other. For everyone, the Scarlet Guards had short arms and legs, so they were the easiest to deal with. The Scarlet Assassin was fast and had high explosive power, but its cruising ability was very weak, and it did no stealth. With the tankers around, it wasn't much of a problem for everyone. Only the Scarlet Sniper was more annoying. When the group walked into the aggro range of these monsters, they never fought head-on. Instead, they shot an arrow and ran away. Not only did their fatal poison arrow have high attack power, but it could also cause damage over time. The most annoying thing was the forest trap. The stun effect was very long, and after that, there was a 30-second slow. It made it hard for everyone to chase after them, and it was quite depressing. Luckily, there were 3 assassins clearing the path in front of them, which ensured that their losses were kept to a minimum. Along the way, Little One showed off with a face full of pride. See that? This is a survivor, the master of jungle warfare, the king of guerrilla warfare. Let me tell you, once you fall into a trap, no one can survive. Wang Yu laughed. Is that so? Why do I feel like your traps are just that? Little One's face turned awkward, and he immediately waved his hand. Boss Cow, you don't count. To be able to stop a few dozen arrows from behind, this was already beyond the scope of a human. Everyone heard this and said, "Oh, Old Cow is also good at dealing with traps." Wang Yu said humbly, "I fell for it once, but I won't fall for it a second time." "Then why aren't you helping to clear the mines?" Wu Ji said disdainfully. Wang Yu's expression changed, and he said resolutely, "I don't want to go." "Good, you have guts. I admire Old Cow's unwavering spirit." Wu Ji gave him a thumbs up. "Not bad, not bad. This is just like me." Chun Xiang Ming Du, to place one's pride, and the other bastards also expressed their opinions. "You guys should beat up this kind of guy who intentionally slacks. Do you know that?" Yang Na said with dissatisfaction. Little One and Bloody Great Wall said with yearning, "What do you know? Experts should be so willful." This was the legendary effect of experts. Slacking was so uncultured that others would automatically give them the most reasonable explanation. What kind of people are they? Yang Na was speechless. No matter how wretched the Bloody Sniper was, it was still a solo monster. With Ming Jian, Shui, and the other 2 assassins leading the way, the group's journey was rather smooth. Other than a few snipers harassing the group a few times and then being focused on, there were no other mishaps. Very quickly, the group reached the deepest part of the bloody forest. The destination was a huge, dark, ancient tree. This ancient tree was somewhat similar to the Elven tree in Elven City, like a smaller version. Other than that, there was no one else here. Something's not right. Where's the boss? Seeing that the area around the black ancient tree was empty, everyone started to get suspicious. Could it be that the cat is preparing to ambush us? Xuanzhen's people said vigilantly. They often did this kind of thing, so they immediately thought of this possibility. Chapter 347. Reeks. Looking at the Xuanzhen people chatting and laughing, Little E finally understood what the Blood Great Wall and the others had said before entering the dungeon. It turned out that they were not being modest. Little One could not understand why such a group of monsters were unknown on the team leaderboard. Perhaps these experts were indifferent to fame and fortune. Little One had a deep impression of the people from Xuanzhen. Other than the cave, the layout of the second floor of the Sunset Temple was no different from the first floor. The only difference was that the monsters on the first floor were trigger type, while the monsters on the second floor were stragglers. Controlled Twilight Worshipper HP, 100000 price, 50,000 skills, Twilight Flame, Energy Blessing. Twilight Guard Puppet HP, 150000 price, 10,000 skills. Charge, Shield Bashfall and Twilight Archer skills. Multi-shot, Crippling Arrow UU1. The 3 monsters were a standard Archer and Priest combination. The Twilight Worshipper was a mage monster. Twilight Flame dealt high damage, and Energy Blessing was a healing skill. The Twilight Guard was a tank that could use charge and shield bash. It had strong crowd control and defense. The Twilight Archer was the main damage dealer. Crippling Arrow was a soft control skill that could slow down. These monsters formed groups of 3 and wandered aimlessly throughout the temple. System notification. Your party has activated the dungeon quest Liberation. Kill all monsters in the scene. Quest reward: 15% completion background introduction. An evil force controlled the believers of the Twilight God and enslaved their souls in the hope that one day someone would help them free themselves. Although these monster combinations seemed difficult to deal with, they were much easier to deal with compared to the first floor's chain beetle mines. No matter how complete the monster combinations were, they were still a set of data. In front of the players who had an absolute advantage in terms of numbers and intelligence, they had no advantage at all. Moreover, the weapons in Wang Yu's hands were all blessed by the Twilight God. They had a decent damage bonus against these monsters. Basically, they could kill a group of monsters in 2 rounds. It didn't take long for everyone to reach the end of the temple. There was a huge throne at the end of the temple. An old man in a red robe sat on the throne. The Mad Twilight Pope, Herald HP, 800000 price, 500000 skills, Blood Barrier, Twilight Judgment, Twilight Sword, Slave Sacrifice. UU2, Background Introduction. The increasingly peaceful life diluted the faith of the people. The disappointed Herald led his followers away from the land of sorrow. He always thought that it was the peace that caused the people to lack respect for God, so they fell into the trap of the evil god and were tempted to become slaves. Seeing Herald's background introduction, everyone secretly said, "It turns out that this old faker is an extremist who has been blinded by his beliefs." At this moment, the name and description above Herald's head were both green. Green represented an NPC that could not be attacked and could only be activated through the storyline. After Wuji commanded everyone to destroy the last group of monsters, Herald slowly regained consciousness. "Why are you doing this?" After Herald woke up, he abruptly stood up and asked in an incomparably dignified manner. However, this question was very sudden, causing everyone to be at a loss. Fortunately, Wang Yu and the others' answer was also very strong. "For the mission, foolish and faithless fellows. We've already left that filthy city, yet you still want to kill us?" Wuji bluffed and said, "It's your god. Let me free you." God, Herald was slightly stunned. Then he laughed maniacally and said, "Haha, God has long since abandoned us. It's all because of you faithless people who have to bear the wrath of God." Herald shouted loudly. The icon above his head suddenly turned red. At the same time, he waved his hand and a dark red barrier surrounded the entire party. The dark red barrier was similar to the Warlock's dark barrier. Both used a barrier to trap the enemy. The only difference was that Herald's barrier could only trap people and not lock them in place. Moreover, Herald's level was relatively high, so the barrier did not have a precast time and was instant cast. Therefore, when Herald suddenly attacked, no one was able to evade. An elite boss was indeed sinister, suddenly attacking while they were chatting. There was no professional ethics at all. "Accept your judgment," Herald roared. The prayer beads in his hand continuously spun, and a dark red energy ball appeared above Wang Yu and the others. Furthermore, under Herald's control, this energy ball grew larger and larger, and smaller. "Damn, this skill is too despicable." Everyone cursed. UU3, surround the enemy in a circle, then throw an area of effect magic. No matter how high the enemy's dodging ability was, under the absolute coverage of firepower, it would be difficult for them to escape death. Naturally, there were exceptions to everything. Wang Yu and Mingdu both knew teleportation skills, so they directly jumped out of the barrier. Seeing the two of them escape, Chun Xiang hurriedly shouted to Wang Yu and the others, "Stall for 3 seconds. I have a way." "All right." Wang Yu nodded, then activated Collapsing Fist and rushed toward Herald. Seeing Wang Yu rushing over, a red light flashed in Herald's hand. His right hand that was not holding onto the beads unsheathed a blood-red longsword and swung it at Wang Yu. "Hey, the old faker is also a dual practitioner of magic and martial arts?" Wang Yu was slightly shocked. He leaned to the side to avoid Herald's longsword and kicked Herald's face. Herald was kicked out of his floating state. Although it was only for a short moment, it was enough. Due to the skill being interrupted, the judgment energy that had lost its support stopped growing and fell back down. Everyone inside the barrier had long since run to the edge of the barrier and avoided the attack of the judgment energy. Chun Xiang had finished preparing his spell. His empty left hand emitted a ball of white light the size of a soccer ball and slowly floated towards the blood-red barrier. The blood-red barrier fluctuated for a while, and a gap was melted. Great Sage's skill, Holy Word, can break all barrier-type spells. Cooldown time, 50 seconds. Casting time, 3 seconds. Cost, 300. This feeling of being caught like a turtle in a jar was clearly not a good one. After Chun Xiang created a gap, everyone escaped from inside. Then, they angrily stood in formation and started attacking Harold. Originally, Harold's martial arts skills were not much, but the Judgment Sword was quite strong. Every attack was able to release a Sword Chi attack. The Sword Chi crisscrossed and did not give Wang Yu any chance to cut in. Not to be outdone, Wang Yu switched his weapon to the Universe Knife. Then, he threw the scabbard in his hand forward and smashed it on Harold's face. Harold's Judgment Sword paused for a moment. Wang Yu rushed over and grabbed the knife, stabbing it towards Harold's stomach. However, at this moment, the other people's long-range attacks also flew in front of Harold. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.